Chapter 10-19. After Danny left, Chen Ong talked to Luke alone as he wished, but the result was not good. Obviously, Luke Cage and the others were not willing to trust a Chinese man who came from afar, especially an unknown Chinese man. In the end, Chen Ong had to give up, and the two only reached an agreement on a limited exchange of information. When Luke left, only Chen Ong and the security personnel who knew nothing about what happened here were left in the entire Herod Industries headquarters. Chen Ong sat quietly in the office and continued to wait. He had keenly heard some small sounds in the headquarters building. It was the sound of thick-soled combat boots stepping on the marble floor, and the sound-absorbing saws made a small sound. That sound, even civilian-level vibration detectors can't detect it. Probably only laboratory-level equipment, operating at full power, can clearly distinguish the footsteps of an entire team. Chen Ong said playfully, "An entire team, they really think highly of me. Even with fairly high-tech equipment, but to be able to reduce the movement of the infiltration to this point, to say that these people have not received professional training, not to mention Chen Ong, even SHIELD will not believe it. And Chen Ong can even detect the movement pattern of the intruder from this small sound. Only the blind daredevil can do this with his hearing. Ninja." Chen Ong sighed. "I've been to so many worlds, but I haven't killed a few ninjas, not counting the full-picture attacks, not counting the ones that accompanied the destruction of Japan, and I haven't dissected and studied them. It's really shameful." With a violent bang, the door of Chen Ang's office was knocked open. Several hooded and masked ninjas flew in from the door, and the leading ninja shot 3 poison darts directly at Chen Ang's vital point. These ninjas moved up and down, and some of them were agile. They could always use the few cover in the room to hide their figures, and their swordsmanship was also very sharp. If Chen Ong was an ordinary person, he would have been cut into 3 pieces by the Tachi. Unfortunately, Chen Ong simply pressed the white button on his right palm. The extremely low-frequency infrasonic waves instantly enveloped the entire room, and the ninjas with extraordinary ninjutsu instantly collapsed to the ground. Chen Ong didn't even look at the darts that were shot at him. He just flipped the desk in front of him with one hand, and only heard 3 thuds. The darts were deeply embedded into the solid wood desk. With such a big commotion, it seems that when Harold was working with you, his company had already been infiltrated by you. Chen Ong slowly stood up and said to the people outside the door, "If the security personnel outside are ninjas of hand and society, then it's no wonder that the 2 people in front were discovered when they sneaked in. It wasn't easy for you to wait until they left before making a move. I bet you even asked for permission from your superiors. Or should I say, you are the upper echelon." After saying that, Chen Ong kicked the collapsed ninjas and sneered, "What era is it now?" He even used ninjutsu. "Do you think you have chakra? Although the era is progressing, ninjutsu is like the gold in the gravel. It will only become more and more brilliant as time passes." The person behind the door sighed and said in Japanese, "Humans are too arrogant. They still know too little when it comes to ninjutsu." The person turned around from behind the door, his back facing the light, and his shadow was projected in front of Chen Ong. He was holding a katana, and his figure was unexpectedly small. He was a very thin old Japanese man. "What an arrogant young man." The person sneered and said, "Do you think you have defeated ninjutsu? At best, you have defeated 1 or 2 lame ninjas." After saying that, he looked at the 3 ninjas who failed the mission, and said with an ominous expression, "You 3 trash, after failing the mission, do you still want to live shamefully?" The eyes of the 3 ninjas suddenly became firm. Although their muscles were paralyzed and they couldn't move, they still vaguely responded. Then, their pupils dilated and they stopped breathing. Chen Ong just calmly watched their performance. He impatiently sat on the overturned desk and whispered with a smile, "Fairy sand and soul returning spell? It seems that you have really secretly learned a lot of good things from the school of Yin Yang. What do you think? one of the 5 fingers of the Hand Society, the traitor of Kunlun, Murakami? Unfortunately, they will never wake up again. Murakami's face suddenly became ferocious. It seems that we have underestimated you. As expected of the people sent by the big country in the east to kill us. Chen Ong didn't explain this misunderstanding. Instead, he looked at the immortal demon in front of him with interest. You, who have lost your magic blades, are no longer qualified to be hunted. Organizations that are thousands of times stronger than you were instantly overturned under the will of the country. Not to mention a mere hand society. But you actually dared to extend your hands into China. You are really courting death. Under Fu Manzhou's plan, you took advantage of the reform period and succeeded in developing some result. But after the change, it will only become something that will kill you. Madame Gao didn't dare to come, but sent you to die. Don't you think carefully about the reason? Murakami's face was ugly, and his wrinkles were squeezed together. He scolded, "Baka." Chen Ong looked up at the moonlight outside the window. Under the moonlight, another crescent moon rose in the room. It was the light of the blade in Murakami's hand. A large part of the ninjutsu of Japan originated from the secret arts of the school of Yin-Yang. After the school of Yin-Yang was tricked by the primeval demon puppet to forge the demon blade doubtless, they were deeply demonized, and a lot of demonic nature seeped into the Yin-Yang technique. Even the ancient books became things like the Lord of Xian's 7 chapters. Therefore, the Yin-Yang technique that was passed down contained unimaginable dangers. If not, the Hand Society wouldn't have cooperated with Harold. The other part of the ninjutsu originated from the martial arts of Japan, mixed with some secret arts of assassination, concealment, theft, and infiltration, forming today's ninjutsu. The demon blade in Murakami's hand was his shikigami. This blade was mixed with illusions and curses. Often, the target could only see a piece of moonlight. They could only see the moonlight and not the blade, let alone Murakami himself. This was the extremely famous blade concealment among ninjutsu, also known as moon release. But Chen Ong turned his hand and a phase shield appeared. Behind the phase shield, the integrated high-energy laser generator on his wrist quickly unfolded and floated in front of Chen Ong like a small shield. The fire control system of the quantum computer quickly locked on Murakami, and then dozens of lasers blocked any escape route of Murakami. In just a few milliseconds, an unknown, charred object fell to the ground in midair. What era is this? They still use ninjutsu? Chen Ong repeated his previous sigh again. The planet destroyer dock over there is online. Science has developed to the point of controlling atoms and the quantum cycle of the human body. They still use the same tricks from the Warring States period and Yin-Yang technique? What about the old dominators? Wasn't the great Cthulhu killed by a near-Earth attack ship on the moon? Even the planetary-level space phase shield couldn't break it. Chen Ong muttered some words that the ninjas couldn't understand, while he stored the charred unknown object into the ultra-low temperature storage device of the space. In order to prevent Murakami from being destroyed by a weapon that could destroy the quantum entanglement effect, Chen Ong also deliberately chose a safer high-energy laser device. To deal with an old antique like Murakami, Chen Ong used an infrasonic wave generator, a space phase shield, a high-energy laser generator, and so on, which were all domestic police products. If it was an ordinary armed police officer after the world change, although they couldn't do better, they wouldn't be that bad. They didn't know if their hands and brains were broken. Only then would they feel that they deserved to be hunted down. If they were lucky enough to be listed on the international wanted list like Lord Man, they would have been vaporized by the near-Earth orbit space death ray weapons 3 years ago. Even if they weren't vaporized by the European community's death ray weapons, they would have been taught a lesson by the Soviet Black Star Troopers. Even if the Soviet Black Star Troopers were busy with alien business, the Republic of Republics' second mirror space monitoring system on Earth would transfer them to the mirror space. Then, if they were unlucky, they would be judged to have no value to be detained, and they would be directly annihilated along with the mirror space when the space restarted once a day. If Lord Man hadn't escaped from Earth in a spaceship, he would have died a horrible death. The surviving members of the ninja team outside the door didn't know if they were scared out of their wits. In any case, they had already slipped away. They didn't even have the time to meet Chen Ong face to face. In an AI factory in New York, Madame Gao looked at the information in front of her and said to the other officers and the leader of the association who were communicating remotely, "The other party's name is Chen Ong. Since 9 years ago, he has been a rather reputable investigator. When he was still unknown, he was once an investigator for an insurance company in Japan. He investigated the evil spirit in the Zobo residence, the urban legend of Tomi that was circulating in Tokyo, the large-scale riot of the human head balloon, the parasitic incident of the extraterrestrial spores in space, and the meteorite crash in Hisao City, Gifu Prefecture. He also personally sank dozens of cement piles with unknown life forms sealed in them in the Mariana Trench. He boarded the island used by the Japanese financial group as a sacrifice, participated in that year's battle royale, and killed everyone including the watchers and organizers. Some people said that they saw him tear the rip-lipped woman apart when she took off her mask. There were also eyewitness reports that when he was in the toilet, he fired 8 shots at one of the doors out of impatience, killing a girl named Hanako who had sneaked into the men's toilet. However, the police didn't find the bodies of the victims in both cases, so the case was left unsettled. The local Yin-Yang masters reported that he once went on a killing spree during his investigation and killed many local demons and god. Later, all the supernatural phenomena disappeared wherever he went. People called him the slayer of ghosts and gods. In general, he is quite proficient in occultism and has destroyed several evil god sacrificial rituals. His combat ability is extraordinary. Another mysterious woman on the communicator asked, "Will he ruin our plan?" "Very likely. We have to get rid of him," someone said. However, Madame Gao only said angrily, "If we kill him, do you want to attract the attention of China? Madame Gao, you are too cowardly. Ever since you failed in China, you have been scared like a dog. The Hand-Peace Association doesn't need a cowardly leader like you. That's because you know nothing about how scary China is." Madame Gao said angrily, "Suwanda, if you want to die, go ahead. Don't drag me down with you." Enough. The most mysterious leader of the Hand-Peace Association said, "The village chief has already gone to deal with it. Let's see what results he brings." Another person suddenly interrupted, "Harold is dead. Now, we have lost another important helper in occultism. We can't control that thing with Yin-Yang alone. No one has ever subdued that terrifying existence. If we want to achieve great things, we can't do it with just our organization. That investigator seems to be very proficient in occultism. Can we make use of him?" The highest leader of the Hand-Peace Association thought for a moment and said, "We can consider it." After the communication was cut off, Madame Gao fell silent in the darkness. As she got closer, her old and thin body could be seen trembling. She said with deep fear, "You actually want to make use of him? You don't know how terrifying that government is. The era of Yin-Yang is over. The era of occultism is gone. In front of them, we are all ants." Chapter 10:20. Danny went to the one-eyed dragon, Nick Fury, and told him about what he had learned from Kunlun and the news of the society. The three-dimensional projection of the one-eyed man sat across from Danny. He supported his chin with his hands and thought about the information Danny brought. After a long time, he said, "Thank you for telling us this. In fact, although it is not a secret that the Hand and the Society are against SHIELD, we did not expect the 5 fingers of the Hand and the Society to have such a background. We did not expect that it involves the power of the magic blade." Danny said seriously, the hand and the society must want to sacrifice the blood of the magic blade. According to the records, the magic blade must be sacrificed. If they are allowed to regain control of the power of the magic blade, the consequences will be unimaginable. The whole of New York may be destroyed because of this. Nick Fury tapped the table and nodded. If you want to stop the hand and the society, you need the help of two people. One is the old man. I told you that he is the master of Daredevil, the person who trained him. But there are some things you do not know. He is also the enemy of the hand and the society, the leader of the ninja organization Innocence Society. The Innocence Society and the hand and the society are old enemies. He knows a lot of important information about the hand and the society. Of course, more importantly, he wants to destroy the hand and the society more than you do. If you can get his help, you will be able to control the hand and the society's fatal weakness, Danny said in a low voice. Even without your reminder, I was going to find him. I might have guessed something about the first person you mentioned, but I have no clue about the second person. Do I know him? Yes. The one-eyed man knocked on the table. But you don't trust him. Then a picture of Chen-Ong appeared in the projection. In the picture, Chen-Ong was wearing a hat and was dressed in ordinary clothes. He looked into the distance as if he was staring at something. Ong Chen, you may not have heard of his name, but in the ears of special people, that is, people like us, his name is widely known. He is the most legendary symbol in the field of investigators. In Japan, in the United States, in Europe, he has investigated mysterious cases and encountered dangers beyond your imagination. This is really a mysterious person. He is a legend and also a mystery. Chen-Eng's file began to appear on the screen. Danny's sharp eyes caught a few small boldface words such as Silent Hill Investigation Report, Elm Street Mystery Case, Crystal Lake Camp Murder Investigation, Cultist Behind Texas Skin Case, Hannibal's Oral Analysis by Investigator Ong Chen, Briarcliff Asylum Investigation, Los Angeles Murder Case, Mystic Falls Town Abnormal Human Study, Columbia Golden Lake Adventure Diary, River Cove Town Cult Family Investigation, JFK International Airport Boeing 777 Parasite Case. In between the dense investigation reports, there were also countless ancient papyrus and parchment books filled with Latin, hieroglyphs, and Hebrew. There were also countless complicated geometric patterns in the shape of hexagons, circles, and rings, as well as mysterious marks that looked like graffiti, mixed with the complicated star maps on oracle bones and stone tablet. Nick continued to introduce. He is a truly outstanding master of occultism. When he was young, he studied for a master's degree in ethnology in China. Later, he was admitted to a double doctorate in folklore and religion. He once studied occultism at the University of Cambridge. At first, he was just a researcher who was proficient in Eastern occultism. But during his time as an insurance investigator in Japan, he began to come into contact with a series of strange incidents. In the process, I can only say that he made amazing progress. His excellent knowledge and amazing adaptability made him unstoppable. After being deployed to North America, he quickly became a master of Eastern and Western occultism, specializing in black magic and cultist rituals. Maybe the numerous cults in the United States gave him the corresponding practical experience. Nick joked. In the end, he chose to go to Europe to track down the headquarters of those cults. He tracked them all the way from England to Romania, then along the ancient Silk Road, all the way back to China. We don't even know what happened along the way. But if there's anyone who can figure out the sinister plot of the Hand Society, it's none other than him. Recalling the conversation with the one-eyed man, Danny went to the hotel where Chen-Ong was staying. After asking the front desk for the room number, he had just reached the door when he heard someone say, "Come in." Danny walked in. Chen-Ong was reading a black book in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Before Danny could explain the purpose of his visit, Chen Ong closed the book and said with a smile, "I didn't expect you to find me so quickly. Looks like someone warned you." Danny nodded and said with a smile, "I've investigated Harold's whereabouts before his death. His death is very likely related to a ninja organization called the Hand Society. This organization has taken over a large part of New York, and even the underground world of the west coast of the Atlantic Ocean. And the Hand Society's plot." Danny told Chen Ong about the relevant clues he had found, with reservations. Chen Ong nodded slightly and said, "Bring me the page of the parchment book you got from Harold's computer." Danny had already prepared a copy of the photo. Chen Ong took the copy, put on his glasses and looked at it with a solemn expression. After a long time, he put down the copy and said, "This is the Necronomicon, written by the crazy Arab poet Abdullah al-Hazid in 730 AD. Of course, this is not the original. Although it's a parchment book, it seems to be a deliberate attempt to mislead the reader into thinking that this is the version translated by the Greek scholar Theodorus Freitas in Constantinople in 950 AD. Because this is the only version written in Greek on parchment. However, the page we're looking at, the star chart that records the positions of celestial bodies such as Jugas, Kas, and Charnos, is full of mistakes and is too simple. It should be a copy republished in Italy by the publisher, Aldus Manutius. This version was published in 1050 AD by the Patriarch of Constantinople, Mikhail, who declared the original illegal and burned it. Based on the remaining copies, it was edited and printed, so the star chart is missing. There are less than 100 copies of this version, and it was also banned on a large scale. However, I know that the University of San Marcos in Lima, Peru, has what might be the last folio of the Greek version. This parchment should be a retro copy of someone at the University of San Marcos. Chen Ong returned the copy to Danny and said, "I think I already know what the Hand Society and Harold are trying to do." He turned to Danny and asked, "You said that the Hand Society might still have the Dallas demon blade made by the school of Onmyogus?" He stood up from the desk and turned to look at the sunset scenery of New York behind the floor-to-ceiling window. He said slowly, "Divine weapons and demon blades each have their own magical powers. Divine weapons need to be reforged, while demon blades need to be sacrificed. Whether it is the Book of Necromancy or the Dallas Demon Blade, they have a common characteristic, which is that they need sacrificial rituals to reforge and summon certain existences. Most of these sacrificial rituals are very evil. They need to ritualistically kill a specific target at a specific time, in a specific place, using a specific method. The characteristics of these rituals are very obvious, so I need information on the cases of unnatural deaths in New York City in the past 3 years. I need to know everyone who has gone missing and died in this city in the past few days. Within 3 months, I need to look through all the information on the cases of normal and unnatural deaths and all the missing cases. I need a detailed map of this city, including the sewers, abandoned factories, and residential areas. I need the information on the movements of the Hand Society and the organization behind you." Chen Ong ordered Danny. Danny was silent for a moment before he said, "I will contact someone to send you what you need." Chen Ong said again, "I need to borrow an observatory." At this time, Danny could not hold it in anymore. He complained, "An observatory? Why do you need an observatory? Whether it is the Dallas Demon Blade or the Book of Necromancy, their power and recorded knowledge all need the coordination of the stars. Whether it is the 3 rings and 28 mansions, or the ecliptic and equatorial constellation system, those cruel rituals all need the coordination of the stars in the sky. Therefore, the star chart also reveals the secrets of the corresponding rituals." Chapter 10:21. At the Columbia University Observatory, HIELD agents cleared out the entire observatory. According to Chen Ang's request, they cleared out a space about the size of 3 large conference tables in the room where the telescope was placed. Danny complained. "Do you know how much effort I had to put in to get Columbia to lend us the observatory for a day? I had to ask a lot of people. You better pray that your astrology works." Chen glanced at him and said calmly, "You better pray that I don't take what you said to heart." The old man with the staff leaned on his walking stick, and the whites of his eyes were rolled back. His face had the unique expression of a blind man, and he did not look young anymore. Even though his body was thin and withered like an old man, the muscles that had thinned out were still filled with energy. The expression on his face was not exactly good. It's hard to imagine that S.H.I.E.L.D. called me over to deal with the Shikoa Society because of your astrology, the old man said to Chen bluntly. He then turned to Danny and said, "If you hope that this liar can destroy Black Sky, I can only say that our cooperation is no longer necessary." Danny said, "To be honest, I have my doubts too. But this was introduced to me by the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. He must have some tricks up his sleeve. You have no idea how terrifying Black Sky is." The old man was still a little dissatisfied. He urged, "The Pure Truth Society and the Shikoa Society have been enemies for many years. As early as the founding of the shogunate, we were enemies. Today we can be called old enemies. Our understanding of the Shikoa Society is better than anyone else. It's the same for their most powerful weapon, Black Sky." The old staff man put down his cane and stared blankly into the distance. He sighed faintly and said, "The power of the Black Void is unimaginably strong. It can control a person's life and death. The 5 Fingers of the Hand Society relied on its power to live forever. The ninjas of the Hand Society also relied on its power to become very strong. They are not afraid of death, and their bodies change into the state of evil spirit. Even after they are destroyed, they can rely on the power of Black Sky to bring them back from hell. The Shikoa Society relied on the power of Black Sky to wreak havoc in Japan. This was because they had yet to fully control Black Sky. If you let them control the Black Void and obtain its power, then you can imagine what you will face in the future. It will be an army of ninjas that will never die. They will control the entire world. Such a powerful force isn't something that a child's game of astrology can stop." After hearing his doubts, Chen finally stopped what he was doing and asked curiously, "I remember that the core of the yin-yang technique in Japan is the astronomical calendar. In fact, before Abe no Saimai turned the yin-yang technique into witchcraft, the Onmyoji had actually inherited the secret arts of the yin-yang sect from the East. They were responsible for divining the fate of Japan and setting up the calendar. Astronomy, no matter which civilization's mysticism, is a prominent subject. You're just a traditional ninja. Seeing such a high level of knowledge, you don't hurry to worship it. You actually want to fight against feudal superstition? In Japanese tradition, people like me who have mastered astronomy are all like you, Prince Shingda, and have high statuses. He could even be called the leader of the Shintoism. And you, a ninja, are just a dog raised by a daimyo. Your status is even lower than that of a low-level samurai. How dare you question the yin-yang astrology that only priests and monks can master?" Chen shook his head and said, "Even the professor of astronomy at Columbia University is curious. Why is a ninja like you so dramatic?" The old man was so angry that his face turned green. Although ninjas sounded powerful, their status in Japan was indeed very low. They were basically equivalent to doing dirty work. On the other hand, Onmyoji could enter and leave the palace and mingle with high officials and nobles. Their status was far more prominent than the ninjas. Not to mention, there was a large amount of yin-yang techniques in the ninjutsu. However, since the Song dynasty, whether it was China or Japan, astronomy had rapidly declined. Not only did it gradually become only symbolic in politics, but it also declined in mysticism. It declined to the point that, except for a few hidden forces, Astrology and astronomy had even lost its significance in mysticism. This situation, on the one hand, was related to the centralization of imperial power after the Song dynasty. Although astrology was the most profound knowledge in divination, it was also the highest-ranking mysticism. However, because of the unique Eastern ideology of the unity of heaven and man, this knowledge had in fact impacted the imperial power and was feared by the imperial power. The Song dynasty even had a law that, apart from the imperial astronomer, scholars who studied astronomy without permission were considered traitors. This was the case whether it was China, Japan, or even Korea and Annan. After all, they were all part of the greater Chinese cultural circle, and it was difficult not to be influenced by China. On the other hand, astrology and astronomy had declined in divination. In other words, the collapse of astrology. After a long period of mysticism, the astrology at the time of birth basically had no effect on a person's fate. Astrology could deceive ordinary people, but it was no longer a secret to the experts. On the other hand, after the glorious period of the Han and Three Kingdoms, the core pillar of astrology, the loyal officials and generals who corresponded to the stars, almost completely fell into silence. There was no one who corresponded to the stars since the Ming dynasty. After Zhu Yuanzhang learned from Lu Ji that he could not correspond to the Ziwei heavenly star, astrology was almost completely abandoned. If not for that, the old man would not have scoffed when he heard that Chen Ong wanted to use astrology to find clues about the hand and the control of the black sky. As he spoke, Chen Ong had already set up a round table under the telescope. It was a giant Dara compass made up of many movable mechanical structures. It was divided into many layers from the inside to the outside, and there were many small movable copper pieces engraved with astrological symbols and heavenly stems and earthly branches. Facing this complex compass, the transparency of the atmosphere began to reach the optimal level of observation. Above the observatory, the clear air refracted the starlight from billions of light years away to the surface of the earth. Chen Ong began to observe with his naked eye. After confirming the current star map of the Northern Hemisphere, Chen Ong began to take out the files of abnormal deaths and missing people provided by SHIEL D and explained, modern astrology usually uses the 12 zodiac signs as the basis for divination, but this is completely wrong and amateurish. In any ancient astrology, the first and most important astrology has always been the 9 planets in the solar system, and now there are 8. In the ancient astrology system, India and China both belonged to the 28 mansions. Europe originated from Mesopotamia, and occasionally referred to ancient Egyptian astrology. But all of these civilizations carried out the first step of astrology, which is the astrolabe of modern astrology. The Chinese cultural circle became the life palace, a chart that shows the various innate and acquired effects of the energy in different positions of the stars on living beings. The first ring must be the 9 planets, or to use the concept that I'm familiar with, 9 luminaries. Chen Ong suddenly raised his head and sneered. The so-called astral energy is also a concept invented by modern astrology. It's a superstition that pays tribute to science. I'll explain the reason later. Now, let me calculate the positions of the 9 luminaries when these people were born and died. Chen Ong skimmed through the list of the dead and missing people and quickly selected a name. This is Erica, a white woman, 24 years old, born on April 23, 1988, died on July 6, 2012. The forensic doctor estimated that the time of death was around 3:20 p.m. Of course, the positions of the 9 planets in the solar system can't be the same. However, including the tidal force of the moon, the relative positions of the 5 stars of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, and the sun and the moon, they are astonishingly similar in astrology. According to the analysis of China's feng shui studies, it's the pattern of the day of the 9 palaces, the time sequence of the 8 gates of the heavenly disk, and the 4 gates of the Chimanduanjia that coincide with each other. Chen Eng's hands began to quickly slide the copper pieces on the compass. The complicated heavenly stems, earthly branches, and 9 stars began to move with a mechanical speed that was as complicated as a differential machine. Chen Ong casually calculated the orbits and relative positions of the 9 planets and the Sun on a piece of paper beside him. The series of complicated formulas made Danny and the old man with a staff pale. The old staff-wielding man seemed to have sensed a disdainful gaze. It was just like when he was still a young ninja and occasionally walked past his master's esteemed guest, the Yin-Yang master, and he would turn his head around to look at him. It was as if he had lost his sight and was getting old. When he walked through the campus and smelled the scent of learning, he would feel the gazes from the people around him. Right when the old man was under tremendous pressure, Chen Ong finally put down his pen and said, "The girl's death was not an accident. She was sacrificed." Danny picked up Erica's file and read it carefully. He raised his head and said, "But according to the investigation, her death was an accident. In the file, there are many people whose deaths are 100 times more suspicious than hers. Why are you so sure that her death is related to the conspiracy of the Hand and the Society?" "Because of the time sequence of the 8 gates, I performed the Chimanduanjia according to the time and place of her death. The 9 palaces of the heavenly disk represent the 9 stars, the 8 gates of the middle plate represent the 8 gates, and the 8 palaces of the territory plate represent the 8 directions. Meanwhile, on the territory plate of the heavenly disk, each palace is assigned with a specific 6 elements, EECD. Based on the specific time and place, I arrange them according to the 6 elements, 3 elements, 8 gates, and 9 stars. In the Chimanduanjia, time is the most important thing, followed by geography. According to the time and place, I arrange them according to the 3 plates, and it was found that the time of her death corresponded to the year of her birth. Considering her fate, her death at the corresponding time must be a sacrifice. This person's fate is unremarkable, and the 4 pillars are not unusual either. It's impossible for normal people to sacrifice them. To sacrifice such an unremarkable date of birth, the host must be a master of occultism, or a lot of manpower and material resources were wasted on trial and error. Chapter 10:22. Chen Ong explained, "It's just constantly trying, like a blind cat trying to kill a mouse. What if you kill the right person? Even if the success rate is only 1 in 10, you can still make 1 sacrifice after you kill 10 people. That's trial and error. It's very likely. When I read the files just now, I found that other people are suspected to have been sacrificed too. But either the alignment of the 9 planets is wrong, or the relative coordinates of the 9 planets are wrong. Either the relative coordinates of the 9 stars are wrong, or the sacrifice is unsuccessful." Danny was shocked. That is to say, the Hand Society might have killed a lot of people for trial and error. Can't normal people host the sacrifice? Chen Ong dropped the pen and sneered, "Why don't you try?" Danny looked down at the complicated formula and shook his head in horror. Chen Ong added, "Astronomy has always been a very esoteric subject. The calculation of the orbits of celestial bodies is still a field full of difficult mathematical problems. My 3-body problem is not something an ordinary person can answer." In ancient times, the development of mathematics was actually driven by the practice of astronomy. It's safe to say that astronomy is the mother of mathematics. The calculation of the relative orbital coordinates of the 9 planets in the solar system and the time sequence is a great test of your mathematical knowledge. In this world, there are many people who understand mysticism, and there are also many people who understand mathematics. However, mysticism researchers who understand mathematics, hee. Chen Ong sneered. "You expect those wizards and warlocks to study mathematics and calculate the trajectories of stars?" He pointed at the old man, who was completely confused, as if he were blind, and said, "Do you see that ninja? How much better can the Hand Society be than him? So, the Hand Society has to cooperate with Harold. Danny was greatly enlightened. Harold's group is plain, but it's not a problem for them to calculate the trajectories of stars. With Harold's help and the Hand Society's talents in mysticism, it's possible for the sacrifice to succeed. Chen-Ong nodded. Most of the cult sacrificial cases that I've investigated have failed miserably. Their so-called sacrificial rituals mostly use bloody and terrifying rituals to attack their own minds, causing their own mental defenses to collapse so that some filthy existences can pollute their minds. In terms of effect, these sacrificial rituals are similar to the hallucinogenic herbs used by the god. But whatever Hand and will want to do, they don't need those fake rituals to replace psychotropic drugs. Danny said solemnly. Then, Ong Chun, we need your expertise to analyze the consequences of the correct rituals. Mysticism knowledge that can truly make contact with those taboo existences is rather difficult and complicated. It requires extremely high qualities in mysticism. Those true sacrificial rituals could summon some terrifying taboo existences. Some of them are demons, some are angels, and some are great spirit. Among them, the most dangerous are known as the old gods. Chen-Ong explained, just like the famous magic book, Solomon's Key. Mages gain power by summoning demons. That's orthodox magic. But because it's extremely dangerous to come into contact with demons, most mages can't control them. Instead, their souls are taken away by the demons. For example, the ancient mages Faust and Dante were victims of this. So, later mages turned to some planes and existences that have no self to gain power from. The old staff man kept a low profile and did not say a word. Danny suddenly asked Chen-Ong, Master, you once mentioned that the life matrix of the person being sacrificed is nothing special. Even though I don't know much about mysticism, based on my shallow knowledge, the people who are sacrificed are usually the ones who are selected and have specific characteristics. For example, the four yin, the four yang, or the stars of calamity, and so on. Why didn't Hand and Will look for these people, but chose to sacrifice those with ordinary fate instead? Chen-Ong shook his head and said, she was selected, the most suitable sacrificial victim. Chen-Ong returned to the binoculars and rearranged the Chimenduanjia. He explained, generally speaking, the sacrificial victim wants to use the special power of the sacrificial victim, so they need to kill the victim at a specific time and place. The key lies in the sacrificial victim. The time and place are chosen by the victim's fate. But this time, the sacrificial victim is chosen according to the time of the sacrificial ceremony. In other words, in order to choose the sacrificial victim at a specific time and place, the most important thing is the victim's time of death. Knowing this, you'll be able to grasp the main clue. Danny looked at the 5 sacrificial victims that Chen-Ong had picked out, but to his surprise, only 3 of them had the time of death, and the other 2 were missing. Chen-Ong pointed on the map and said, the white man died last Wednesday at 9:45 p.m. in the Northeast City. This black woman will be sacrificed at 1:05 a.m. the day after tomorrow at this location. Danny stepped forward and said, this is the dock area. The situation is very complicated, so it's hard for us to find a person hiding here. Also, how do you know they are sacrificial victims? They don't have the time of death at all. Chen-Ong smiled and said, I told you that the first step of astrology is the 9 star palaces, which is to build an astrolabe with the 9 planets in the solar system. What's the second step? Danny finally understood what was going on. Chen-Ong said, since I saw the picture of the necromancer book you brought, I've understood the key to the whole sacrificial ceremony. The specific time is the key. The necromancer book records the most dangerous existences that sorcerers can summon, the old gods and the old dominators. Have you ever heard of a theory? The universe is a dark forest. Every hunter will first eliminate the opponents who expose their position. There is similar taboo knowledge in the sorcerer's theory. There are some terrible existences in the universe. They either pursue destruction or infect everything. In short, they just want to complete some predetermined task. It is either their nature or their choice. Among these existences there are Burning Legion, Zerg, Chaos, Thanatos and so on, including the old gods. So the sorcerers put forward a theory. When you need to achieve something similar to those existences, such as destroying a world, you don't need to do it in a big way. You only need to send a signal. For example, calling Burning Legion, summoning Jiangya, contacting Chaos, sending coordinates to Thanatos, Zerg and Star Swallower. Then you don't need to do anything. They will help you achieve your goal. It can be said that this is the most terrible spell with the least cost. It is also the most taboo knowledge for sorcerers. The Necromancer book is a magic book that records this taboo. Danny understood a little. His face turned pale and cold sweat dripped down. He said in a low voice, "Hand and the purpose of the sacrificial ceremony. That's not a sacrificial ceremony. It's a communication, a text message." Chen Ong said calmly, "The universe is too big. Communication and distance are problems. What really protects the Earth is the infinite universe. Finding a planet like the Earth in the universe is the most difficult problem. But for those people on the Earth, finding the Earth is not a problem. The problem is telling the Earth's location to others. There is no such energy source on the Earth that can send an instant signal to hundreds of light years away. But there is one next to the Earth. The Sun is such a celestial body with enough mass and energy. For electromagnetic waves, the Sun has an energy mirror enhancement and reflection effect, which can be used to achieve interstellar communication. But for a country bumpkin like the Hand and the Society, they probably can't even make a device that can use the solar energy mirror enhancement and reflection effect to send electromagnetic waves. The Red Coast base also needs the power of a country. But the same principle can also be used in occultism. The human soul, or quantum information, can be used as an information carrier for interstellar communication. And the taboo knowledge recorded in the Necromancer book, in astrology, is actually to use the Sun as a communication device to send a specific message recorded in the human soul to a specific direction. In other words, to summon the old gods. It's not easy to use the Sun. The Sun emits immeasurable gravitational waves and electromagnetic radiation all the time. Who can make a call with such a big phone? Hearing this, Danny's 7 apertures were all clear, and he was about to die. Although Chen Ong was using the simplest language, the astronomy doctors of Columbia University were all listening with shining eyes. But Danny and the old man felt like they had fallen into a cloud and could only feel a wave of fear. Chen Ong continued to explain, "Fortunately, this phone is being dialed all the time. The Sun is being affected all the time. Of course, only the planets around it have the ability to affect it. The 9 planets are like an invisible hand, constantly changing the signal of the Sun's radiation. Then the signal has been connected. All that's left is a piece of information. Based on the positions of the 9 planets, it can be calculated that at a certain point in time, the signal of the Sun is only meaningful to a specific object. In short, the positions of the 9 planets are like different phone numbers, dialing different star fields. To send the signal to the right star field, you must choose the right time. And if you choose the right time to send a soul or a piece of quantum information far away, you also need an initial trigger point. And the trigger point is the fate that corresponds to that time. In such a way, the whole ritual has completed a logical chain. Choose a specific time, kill the corresponding person through the ritual, and send their soul to the signal oscillator through the orbit of the 9 planets, and then send it to a specific star field. This is the internal logic of the whole ritual." Chen Ong finished his explanation. Danny thought for a long time before he finally understood his explanation. At this moment, among the doctors of Columbia, someone raised his trembling hand. "Then, sir, Has the hand already sent the message to the old god? Chen picked up his pen and said, "Let me do some calculations." Lucian calculated the time sequence of the stars corresponding to the 5 offerings. Then, according to the extremely complicated calculation method in the Book of Necromancy, he converted the data into the corresponding star field coordinate. Then, he began to observe with the telescope. Danny asked in a low voice, "Did they succeed?" While crossing out Erica's name, Chen explained, "Erica didn't." Looking at the nervous doctors of Columbia and the cautious Danny, Chen could only explain, the star field corresponding to Erica was wrong. They miscalculated the time and failed to match the coordinates on the art of necromancy. Chen showed the picture of the Book of Necromancy to them. Danny asked anxiously, "What about the rest?" Chen checked again. There are 2 coordinates, which were recorded incorrectly in the Book of Necromancy. Honestly speaking, pirated books are not good. There are still too many mistakes in this version. One more. The coordinates are wrong. That star field should be Boötes. Alpha Boötes is also known as Arcturus, and there are 3 planets orbiting it. It seems that some of the old gods or their families live here. According to the records, it should be Legier's star. Yes, the 3rd planet in Alpha Boötes' orbit is the main body of Roygel, one of the great old ones. It's a gigantic lump of flesh with countless tentacles and a pair of disproportionate wings. Everybody's face was ashen, Chen suddenly added with a smile, but it disappeared. Danny asked nervously, "What do you mean?" Chen explained, "According to the observation of gravitational waves, the planet suddenly disappeared 3 months ago. It caused the gravitational waves of Alpha Boötes. Experts suspect that it may have encountered a cosmic disaster. 3 months ago, the Soviet warship slowly passed by Alpha Boötes. In the void, a huge lump of meat the size of half the Earth was wriggling, with countless tentacles rolled into a ball. But it was just a piece of wreckage. More than half of its body had just been vaporized by a planetary destroyer cannon. But now it was surrounded by a Soviet fleet. The commissar looked fearlessly at the lump of meat that kept emitting crazy noises and sneered in disdain. Then 80 antimatter cannons fired together, annihilating all matter in this space. That's it. No matter what the reason is, before the signal from the ritual arrived, the planet disappeared along with some unknown existence. Only the ritual the day after tomorrow. Chen mumbled to himself. "Let me calculate. The coordinates are correct. The star map is also correct." Chapter 10:23. The second New York was built on the ruins of the original New York City. There used to be 5 districts in New York, but after the disaster of Skynet, the place where Skynet descended was Manhattan, the most prosperous district in New York. It was isolated and abandoned. Today, it was a ghost town controlled by Skynet. The isolated district was along the Hudson River, separating half of New York City from the rest of the city. That was the so-called Old New York, the Skynet-controlled land of order, and the lawless wilderness of the city. The new New York was only built on Staten Island and a part of Brooklyn in the southeast of New York, as well as the part near Manhattan that was isolated. As a result, more than half of the area had been lost, and it also included a large piece of land on the west bank of the Hudson River in New Jersey that originally did not belong to New York. The original Manhattan and the Bronx were almost completely isolated. Chen had determined the location of the ritual through astrology. It was located in the Newark Harbor in New Jersey. Unlike the compact New York Harbor along the Hudson River in the early days, the Newark Harbor was arranged along the shore, and the land area was spacious. Although Danny knew the situation here, he still felt hopeless when he saw the transportation system consisting of millions of containers, dozens of large warehouses, and thousands of small warehouses. He couldn't help complaining to Chen, "Can't you be more precise? There are tens of thousands of warehouses here, and the blood sacrifice ritual can even be carried out in containers. The daily throughput here is in the millions." To find a single container out of hundreds of thousands of containers that could be used for the ritual is practically a fantasy. If it were any other mysticism ritual, I would naturally be able to shrink it to a point of a dozen or so square meters. First, I can observe the surrounding environment. Small-scale rituals are very vulnerable to interference, so some dangerous, evil, or even mediocre places can't be used. All I need is a relatively sensitive ritual artifact, such as a spirit pendulum, compass, or dragon-seeking ruler. With my attainments in feng shui, it's not difficult to find them, Chen Ong said humbly. But the first problem we have to face is that such a ritual doesn't need to be limited to any specific location. The ritual can be held anywhere in the world. It has high requirements for the small environment, but it doesn't have any requirements for the big environment. So, do you want to find a suitable location for the ritual around the world, or do you want to find the ritual here? You should be glad that they require a specific astrological ritual. Celestial feng shui, or astrology's requirements for territory, was usually based on latitude and longitude, which was the Earth's specific angle relative to the stars to determine the location, so it covered a large area. Also, we were unlucky that the most suitable place for the ceremony was one of the busiest ports in the world. There are a large number of people and material activities here every day. The qi or spirituality in the surroundings changes drastically. It's a wasteland in the study of feng shui. The changes in the environment are so intense that all mysticism-probing artifacts and tools are rendered useless. For most mysticism rituals, this kind of place where people and substances change violently is a place of death. That's because there's only geomancy in the big environment here. There's no geomancy in the small environment. The most important thing about geomancy is stability. Whether it's the Eastern way of geomancy or the Western way of magic arrays, the first requirement for the environment is stability. But celestial feng shui or astrology rituals don't need a small environment. They rely on the environment, and their power comes from the most stable and powerful source of power on Earth, the stars. 99% of the power of the entire planet comes from the stars in the universe, and 90% of this comes from the nearest star to us, the Sun. This kind of power is more powerful than any dragon vein, spirit vein, enchantment, or great spirit. Luke, the black man who followed them, looked at Danny's gaze and said helplessly, "S-H-I-E-L-D, can't possibly spend so much manpower and material resources to search the entire port. First of all, the Congress and the President won't agree to go to such great lengths to investigate whether the Hand and the Society are alien invaders. Didn't you see that the Avengers didn't participate in the investigation? Although the black sky you speak of is very scary, the Hand and the Society is just an underground organization at the end of the day. It's too weak compared to aliens, Apocalypse, and even Hydra. Their threat is far from that level." The old man sneered. "Sooner or later, they'll regret it because they underestimated us. Moreover, even the current director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Cole doesn't have the power to interfere with the operation of one of the largest ports in the United States. Every minute of delay here costs hundreds of millions of dollars," Luke said helplessly, "so we can only rely on ourselves." "Actually, you don't have to worry." Chen Ong calmly pushed up his glasses. Danny turned his head excitedly and asked, "Is there any other way?" Chen Ong wrote and drew on a piece of paper as he explained, "When I said that we don't have to worry about interference in the ritual, I meant under ideal circumstances. You know, ideal circumstances usually refer to standard situations explained in textbooks. Standard situations in textbooks usually also require standard operations in textbook. In the field of occultism, standard operations in textbooks are naturally easy for me. But the Hand and the Society? They're still far from that." Danny suddenly said excitedly, That is to say, the hand and the society can't hold sacrificial rituals at will? Judging from the previous sacrificial rituals that were full of mistakes, the level of these people is probably only slightly better than the leaders of the new and prosperous cults in the United States. There's still a long way to go before they're professionals. Not to mention a professor like me. Luke quietly noted down Chen Ang's words and then asked, Doctor, are there many people who can be considered as professionals in occultism? You mean those on Earth? Chen Ang said meaningfully, quite a few. Most occultism associations exist in a secretive state. Let's not talk about the East for now. Whether it's Kunlun, Zen, or reclusive forces, they're all deeply hidden. Europe is the birthplace of occultism in the West. The hermit orders, the Vatican, and even the dark creatures and ancient cults are countless. Not to mention India, Egypt, Kamartaj, and Africa's voodoo cults. They're countless. Just as Luke and the one-eyed man behind him were deeply uneasy, Chen Ong suddenly smiled and said, But when it comes to North America and even the United States, you can rest assured. This is a desert of occultism. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many new cults choosing to take root here. In the whole of North America, there are only a few who can be considered professionals. A certain daywalker who hunts vampires counts as half a professional, and a vampire counts as one. Kamartaj has a temple in New York, and a certain knight who has a contract with a demon counts as one. It seems that some witches survived the Salem witch trials. There are also a few members of the hermit orders in North America. The Freemasons seem to be preserving some of the heritage of the extinct Indian civilization. Chen Ong casually mentioned a few forces and then pointed out, these forces may have professionals but not necessarily. After all, professionals, especially those in occultism, need a long time to learn and train. After the professionals of some forces die, there will be a long period of blank space. Seeing that it was almost afternoon, Danny had to interrupt them and said, I don't care about that. I just want to know how to find the people of the hermit orders. Seeing that the sun was gradually moving to the west, Chen Ong turned around and said, We need to wait until night. There are too many human activities now, and the interference is too strong. Will you be able to find them at night? Danny asked solemnly. Chen Ong spread out his hands. Unfortunately, I can't. Then why are you still wasting our time? You know, we are running out of time. There are less than 8 hours to 1 in the morning, and this is not even enough for us to walk around the port, Danny said angrily. But at night, the interference will be weaker, and the hermit orders will have to take out something. Chen Ong explained calmly. What is it? Danny asked. Magic blade, Taoist remains. Danny's expression changed. They will take out something like this? Chen Ong said indifferently, of course. Otherwise, how do you think they almost succeeded several times with their amateurs? As I said, the power of a ritual depends on the details. Every time the precision is doubled, the power of the ritual will increase by 10 times. This is the principle of the AI chip in occultism. The power of a secret instrument depends on the precision. If the precision is not enough, then it can only rely on strength. It is commonly known as flying brick, which means that as long as the force is strong enough, even a brick can fly. As long as the power of the core is enough, even the crudest secret instrument can be effective. With the hermit order's level, how strong can they take out a core? Of course, they will use the power of the magic blade. So the sacrifice must have been killed by the remains of the magic blade. Using the power of the magic blade to activate the power of the secret instrument. Danny suddenly understood. At that time, the power of the magic blade can be easily detected. Chen Ong sneered. By the time the power of the magic blade leaks, it will be too late. Only after the ritual is completed will the power of the magic blade leak under the stimulation of the secret instrument. By then, it will be too late. Danny blushed. Then what should we do? Chen Ong looked up at the port area and said calmly, We can only use active detection. When the magic blade enters the port area, we can actively stimulate it and determine its location according to its reaction. At this time, Chernong looked back at the thing on Danny's back with a hint of pity in his eyes, but also excitement and curiosity. At this time, we will need your power. The magic blade on your back can sense it. As long as the remains of the Sirius saber on your back provoke it, Dowless, who has recovered some spirituality through the blood sacrifice, will feel the provocation and react. At this time, Dowless has not recognized his master yet. The hermit orders will not be able to stop his instinctive reaction. Danny looked at Chen Ang's burning eyes and instinctively grabbed the magic weapon on his back. He stammered, "But the Sirius saber has not been reforged. It is still a remnant. I don't know how to provoke it." Chen Ong pushed up his glasses, which reflected the cold white light. Danny was terrified. He said slowly, "It's okay. I know. Reforging a magic weapon requires the weapon master's strong emotions. This is called the path of the magic weapon. Then, it can be reforged with the environment formed by the hearts of the outside world. Right now, we can't provide the environment that the Sirius saber needs, but it can still react under the strong emotions of the weapon master. The remains of a magic weapon are also a magic weapon. They also have great power." Danny stammered, "Then, what kind of emotions does the Sirius saber need?" Chin Ong revealed a cold smile and said excitedly, "This is the core secret of the divine weapons. Everyone knows that the three sovereign sword is driven by emotions, but the other divine weapons are all a mystery. According to my analysis, the three sovereign sword is driven by love for the country and the people, and the supreme benevolence of sacrificing one's life for the world. At the same time, the weapon master must have the heart of a cold and emotionless emperor to drive it. Therefore, the weapon master's secret is called the Emperor of Heaven's benevolence, but emotionless like the heavenly Tao. The past weapon masters either used benevolence or emperor's heart to drive it. None of them could reach the heavenly heart realm of the ancient Yellow Emperor's era. Therefore, they couldn't recreate the peerless glory of the first magic weapon. Back then, great ancestor De Xing didn't use the three sovereign divine weapon because he couldn't understand the emotionless emperor's heart even though he had a benevolent heart. The blade of the five emperors probably requires a weapon master to have a peerless domineering aura. The path of the magic weapon is hidden in the stories of the past weapon masters. By imitating the past weapon master's state of mind, one can probably figure it out. Generally speaking, they will imitate the weapon master who gave the magic weapon its name, which is the most well-known weapon master. Therefore, the weapon master of the three sovereign swords should be an emperor, the weapon master of the five emperors should be tyrannical, and the weapon master of Chimanduanjia, or the divine foresight, needs to be extremely wise. The Sirius saber? Naturally, one has to understand the path of the magic weapon from the story of Temujin. Temujin? Danny was shocked. To conquer? Conquering is one of the elements. The Sirius saber probably needs the wolf nature of a nomad, that is, a hawk-like and wolf-like type in order to conform to the path of the magic weapon. The ambition to conquer the world, the greed to plunder everything, the heroism to dominate the world, only those who are vicious and unruly, cunning and crazy, and have a very grand spirit can obtain the approval of the Sirius saber. Chen Ong glanced at Danny and sneered. You are still far from it. The path of the magic weapon needs to be practiced. For now, you need to distort your nature to not conform to the hawk-like and wolf-like type. In other words, you need to get rid of your cowardice and the nature that doesn't conform to the requirements of the magic weapon. Chen Ong looked at Danny and shook his head. You are a little wild now, but you are still far from being a hero. In order to use the Sirius saber, you must understand the nature of Temujin's rise. Temujin was not born Temujin. He went through many trials and tribulations before gradually becoming the strongest weapon master of the Sirius saber. Chen Ong looked at Danny and suddenly revealed a smile that made Danny shiver all over. The first trial is, of course, the kidnapping of his wife by Mi Erchi. Chapter 1024. Danny's heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. He strongly wanted to refute Chen Ang's words and prove that it was nonsense to follow the path of Temujin to awaken the heavenly weapon. But the path of the heavenly weapon was the proof of it. Behind him, the Sirius clan trembled impatiently when he was immersed in these complicated thoughts, completely proving what Chen Ong said. But Danny was still stunned. But I don't have anyone I like. How could this happen? Chen Ong said meaningfully, in the history of the Sirius Blade, there was a weapon master who thought like you. He didn't want to suffer the humiliation of the heavenly weapon and decided to never fall in love with anyone. Originally, it would have been impossible for him to become a weapon master. The Sirius Blade was just a piece of scrap metal in his hands. This person was able to maintain his mind under the power of the heavenly weapon. It was truly admirable. Unfortunately, he was too compatible with the nature of the Sirius Blade. On top of that, at that time, the fate of the Han dynasty in Shenzhou backfired. The Qing dynasty emperor who came to the Central Plains was young and powerful ministers were in power. Seeing that the legal system of the Qing dynasty was in danger of being overthrown, he immediately ordered the fate of the dragon vein to counterattack, calling for the master of the heavenly wolf blade to suppress the fate of the Qing dynasty. In addition, at that time, 2 divine weapons and devil blades appeared in the world. One divine weapon fell into the hands of the great Ming dynasty's Zheng Wang of Taiwan. The other devil blade fell into the hands of the powerful minister Oboi under the scheme of the Red Flower Society, who fought against the Qing dynasty and restored the Ming dynasty. This gave the Han people a chance to rise up and restore their orthodoxy. At such a time of crisis, the barbarian emperor was still young and couldn't master the Sirius Blade. Do you know why this person could boast and not fall in love with anyone? Chen Ong smiled. Because of his strange fate. He was the reincarnation of the Great Snow Mountain. At that time, the Lamaism was so powerful in the Qing dynasty that they could even touch the heavenly weapon. He was the owner of the heavenly weapon personally chosen by the 4th living Buddha. Of course, Lamas couldn't marry anyone. As long as he didn't fall in love with anyone, he wouldn't have to worry about this. Patala Palace was on good terms with the supreme sorcerer of that time. With the Kamartaj and Patala Palace, they wanted to take the opportunity to understand the heavenly weapon and the devil blade of the Central Plains. In the end, when this person was 16 years old, he first activated the divine armament of the heavenly wolf blade. The power of the divine armament actually caused his devout Buddhist mother to cheat on him. Such a shocking disaster shocked the Patala Palace. Many head lamas even believed that the reincarnated spirit child had made a wrong choice, which was why such a scandal had happened. He secretly executed his mother. This incident destabilized this person's position as a living Buddha and dealt him a huge blow. His Zen heart was broken. From then on, I forgot my oath and gave up on Zen cultivation. I focused on the Skywolf saber technique and indulged myself in love. I wanted to avoid the backlash of the divine armament Tao and leave behind the name of a love monk. This person was Tsangyang Gyatso. Tsangyang Gyatso's history is advanced by 30 years here. Later, the barbarian lord obtained another demonic blade from the Qin court. He took advantage of the fact that Oboi was caught off guard and killed him. He even turned the spearhead to the Lamaism, using the power of the demonic blade to fight against the divine weapon. Tsangyang Gyatso was no match for him and died with his cultivation crippled. Because of this, the barbarian king obtained the heavenly wolf blade, becoming one of the few people in history to possess both a divine weapon and a demonic blade. He called himself the Sage of the Ages. Because the last person to possess both a divine weapon and a demonic blade was the founder of the Tang dynasty, the self-proclaimed Emperor of the Ages, Tang Taizong Li Shimin. Chen Eng's tone was awe-inspiring. The divine weapon and the demonic blade are the most powerful existences in mysticism. Their power is actually something that a small individual's fate can defy. 20 divine weapons and magic blades, each one of them not inferior to the Church's 3 great holy weapons: Holy Grail, Holy Spear, and Holy Cross. They are also not inferior to the Eye of Agamotto that was secretly passed down in the Mage country, Camartage. Divine weapons and demonic blades are so powerful that a mere weapon grandmaster wants to control them. Of course, there will be backlash. The path of the divine weapon is not affected by others. The so-called backlash is when the path of the divine weapon affects the weapon grandmaster's fate. The 3 sovereign sword has the tribulation of the emperor's heart, while the 5 emperor saber has the tribulation of the 3 sovereign sword master's nemesis, and the tribulation of becoming a king. Every 5 emperor saber master is a person of love and character, and has the appearance of dominating the world. Therefore, they will usually lose their loved ones and be killed by the 3 sovereign sword master. Chiman Dunjia, warping the heavens and latitude and earth, has extreme wisdom, and will suffer the tribulation of being envied by the heavens and men. The Sirius blade has the appearance of an eagle and a wolf, and will suffer the tribulation of breaking dreams and hurting love. The common land hammer has the feeling of being deserted by the masses, and will suffer the pain of rebelling. The divine weapons and demonic blades are inauspicious objects. Since ancient times they have only favored heroes. However, only through many trials and tribulations can a hero be born. Since ancient times, heroes have not been kind. With such great power, of course, there will be corresponding misfortunes. Chen Ong sighed with emotion. Perhaps all of this was already predestined when the divine weapons and demonic blades were created. After all, the one who created the divine weapons and demonic blades was the primordial demon. Danny stared blankly at the Sirius blade on his back and said, "Such a divine weapon." He wanted to say that he did not want it, but the divine weapon in his hand seemed to have heard his words. It suddenly let out a long cry, as if it was unwilling to be given up. This actually allowed him to get a glimpse of the power of the Sirius blade as a divine weapon. Danny felt the powerful power that could destroy heaven and earth, and could not say anything else. The old man with a staff and Luke, who were standing beside him, seemed to have sensed something. Luke was just a Native American, so he did not understand the meaning of the presence that made him shudder, but the old man with the staff was different. He stared at the Sirius blade in Danny's hand, and a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. "This is the power of a curse." Chen Ong felt the power and could not help but sigh. "I'm afraid that this is why the new government of China gave up on these divine weapons and demonic blades. After all, the Middle Earth no longer needs heroes to protect it. The epic of the divine weapons of emperors and generals will eventually become history. The Middle Earth will usher in an era without heroes. Perhaps these divine weapons and demonic blades will also be unwilling to give up. I heard that the 3 sovereigns' sword has been silent since the founding of the country, and the 5 sovereigns' sword made its own cry on the day the world changed. The cry of the sword carried a deep sense of loneliness and sorrow, moving all who heard it. Some time ago, when the 3 sovereign swords were about to be sent out of the country, they self-destructed and injured themselves, forcing the central government to send them back to the museum. Perhaps this divine weapon will remain there forever, quietly displayed, displaying the history of the emperors, generals, and ministers. The world is harmonious, and the people are united. The heroes are helpless, and the divine weapons are empty. Chen Ong said faintly. Danny listened and could not help but feel touched, but he still refused. "But I still can't touch the way of the divine weapon. After all, I just came down from the mountain, and I don't even have a girlfriend." Chen Ong laughed coldly. "Do you think I don't know the power of the Sirius blade? The blade is as greedy as a wolf, and every generation's owner must be infected by it. They have an endless desire for anything beautiful in the world, so they have an evil temperament and love everyone they see. They must want to build a large harem. Even a ghost would not believe that you have no goals. It's not like the 5 sovereigns sword, which has inherited the way of the overlord. It will only love one person in its life, and it will not change until death. Every generation will repeat the tragedy of farewell, my concubine. Therefore, the way of the divine weapon of the Sirius blade is to plunder the beauties of the world, build a large harem, and then the harem will betray the owner, cuckold after cuckold. If you want to bear its power, you must be cuckold. In the beginning, you need to enter the way with grief and indignation, but as your cultivation deepens, you will see the light and learn to forgive. You will no longer care. Danny's face turned red, and he was so ashamed that he wanted to die. He said fiercely, "That's impossible. You must be lying to me." Chin Ang's expression was calm, and he did not care at all. These divine weapons and devil blades were all forged with his evil intentions. How could something created by the primeval demon be so harmless? "What a joke," he said. Every generation's owner of the Sirius blade thought so at the beginning. But later they all saw the light. Did Temujin not see Joki as his own son? He did not expel him from the Golden Clan. With a hint of a smile, Chun Ong said to Danny, "One day, when you look back at everything that happened today, you will smile in relief. At that time, you will have learned to forgive." Extremely possessive, but able to face the cuckold without caring, this is the realm of the Sirius blade. Luke finally could not help but interrupt. "Although I don't really understand what you are saying, I have a feeling that it is not something good." But Danny just came out of Kunlun. He doesn't seem to have the conditions to sense this divine weapon. Chenong smiled and said, "You can do it too. Speaking of which, your conditions are better than his. After all, you have the purple man. Maybe if you pick up this divine weapon, you will get a response. Unfortunately, when those things happened, you did not know your current girlfriend." Luke's face immediately darkened. He turned his head and did not speak. The old man, however, was ready to make a move. Chen Ong glanced at him and sneered. "Don't even think about it. At your age, giving you the Sirius blade might even stimulate some special hobby in you. With this kind of special hobby, not only will you not be sad or angry in the face of the way of the divine weapon, but perversely excited, it will not be recognized by the divine weapon. Otherwise, wouldn't the curse become a benefit?" Danny felt slightly humiliated and said angrily, "I can't accept this kind of thing." With a cold expression, Chernong said in a stiff tone, "For the people of New York, for the people of the world, for the overall situation." He looked at the sky and said, "We don't have much time." Danny looked dejected. He murmured, "Corinne." Luke was just about to tell the one-eyed man about the stalemate here. When he heard this, he was stunned and asked, "What?" Danny's face turned red with embarrassment. "I have a crush on Professor Li Wen's daughter, Corinne." Luke quickly told the one-eyed man about this. Of course, Shield knew about Li Wen and his daughter. The one-eyed man was also a ruthless character. He said on the other end of the phone, "It's simple. Corinne has a boyfriend. Although they have broken up, I will create a coincidence for them to meet." Perhaps it was to protect Danny's face, but the one-eyed man did not say anything else. The rest of the time could only wait. As time passed, the sky gradually turned dark. The old man and Luke were a little anxious. Danny squatted alone in the distance. His expression was very complicated. He stared at the ground in a daze. When the moon rose and the old man could not bear it anymore, the one-eyed man, Nick, finally called. Luke looked at Danny sympathetically and handed him the phone. Danny looked at the phone and could not help but kneel on the ground. Listening to the subtle voice in his ear, Chen Ong thought calmly, "It seems that Americans are very open-minded even though they are Chinese. I wonder how many boyfriends Corinne has had." Maybe it's a handsome agent sent by the one-eyed man. I guess he said it was an ex-boyfriend to take care of Danny's feelings. Danny's hands trembled slightly. His eyes were filled with endless grief and indignation. His true chi surged uncontrollably and spread out through the remains of the Sirius saber on his back. Behind him, it formed a looming Sirius howling at the moon. The moonlight gathered toward where Chen Ong and the others were. From a distance, it looked like a pillar of the sky had appeared in the port. The moonlight gathered above the warehouse and enveloped Danny. The black Sirius true chi devoured the power of the moonlight. An indescribably powerful force suddenly enveloped the whole port. The bright moon in the sky was silently missing a hole. The edge of the full moon disappeared little by little. The agent of SHIELD looked at the sky and said in surprise, "There's no lunar eclipse today." Far away on the west coast of the Pacific Ocean in the United States, the one-eyed man, Nick, quietly watched the lunar eclipse in the sky. His expression suddenly became serious. Fortunately, his face was dark, so no one could see it. Chen Ong also watched as the moon was devoured little by little, and the stars became more and more brilliant. Among them, the Sirius star suddenly became several levels brighter. He said in a low voice, "When the moon is dark, the Sirius star will appear. This is the sign of the Sirius star offending the moon and the disaster of war." The remains of the Sirius saber on Danny's back still vibrated. The transformed Sirius true chi invaded his body, making his face more and more ferocious. His eyes gradually became bloodshot. As he raised his head, a pair of blood-red eyes forced the old man and the others to step back. The old man panicked and said, "His chi seems to be getting stronger and stronger. Now it has far exceeded his original chi. And it's becoming evil." Chapter 10:25. Doubtless, the mysterious sensing ability between heavenly weapons finally came into play. Under the power of the awakening of the Sirius saber, a black and red evil aura rose from the northwest, exuding a power no less than that of the Sirius saber. But this also exposed the location of the heavenly weapon. At this time, the Sirius saber in Danny's hand became more active under the stimulation of Doubtless. The trembling broken saber swallowed Danny's pure yang genuine chi, gradually changing the nature of Danny's genuine chi. The pure yang genuine chi gradually became dry and hot. The power of heavenly weapons was mysterious and unpredictable. Every heavenly weapon or devil blade was a peerless martial art. The peerless martial art contained in the Sirius saber was the true meaning of Sirius when the barbarians invaded the central region, calamity of soldiers. There were 7 calamities in the calamity of soldiers: drought, locust, hunger, plague, shwetu, burning the city, and lightning. They symbolized the 7 calamities that the Son of Heaven could sense when the calamity of soldiers was about to begin. Danny's pure yang genuine chi gradually became dry and hot. It was the supernatural ability of the heavenly weapon that made his genuine chi transform into the drought attribute. The old man was the closest to Danny, so he was affected by the genuine chi that Danny released. He was blind, but because of this, his sense of touch was more sensitive. He immediately felt that the air around him was quickly losing moisture as Danny's genuine chi evaporated. Just because he was standing a little closer, the old man could feel the moisture on his skin quickly evaporating as if a force was devouring him. Chen Ong inadvertently glanced around and saw that where Danny passed, the dust on the ground, which had been moist because of the night temperature, quickly dried and turned into gray powder, as if the soil had lost its vitality. In the cold and foggy night, the people near the seaside port could faintly feel the restless hot wind of the desert. Danny's true energy surged, and the dry and expanding hot air inside his tight-fitting warrior suit swelled and flowed. His whole body soared up like a big bird, and with a tap on the container in the distance, he glided away. He himself didn't notice that his lightness skill had made an astonishing progress. Hanba's genuine chi evaporated the water around him, creating hot air that made him as light as a hot air balloon, allowing him to stay in the air for a longer period of time. He leaped over 100 feet and disappeared from Luke's sight after a few ups and downs. Chen-Ong stepped on the motorcycle parked beside him, turned the throttle, and sped away. The old man's thin figure sped away like a black line. He was as agile as a rabbit, and with the unique movement method of a ninja, he disappeared. Luke was the only one who wasn't prepared, so he clumsily chased after them. Although the big black man was clumsy, he was fast. In a warehouse in the port area, Fighting Man, who had only one of his 5 fingers, was holding Tyrannical, which was trembling violently in his hand. Tyrannical was like a katana that had been broken in half. It was like a sword, but it had recovered the edge of a weapon, unlike the serious blade, which was still like an iron rod. But it was clear that Tyrannical had not been successfully recast. Its body was still riddled with scars and half-melted scars, but the thick color of blood gave it a trace of vitality. The scarlet blood wrapped around the blade, slowly flowing as if it had a life of its own, highlighting the demonic nature of the demonic blade. Black Sky can feel the enemy approaching. It's very agitated, it's angry. It's also thirsting for blood. Madame Gao closed her eyes, sensing Tyrannical's emotions. Fighting Man scratched his head and said blankly, "Should we wait here, or?" Madame Gao melted into the darkness, and her voice came from the darkness. "I'll hide with the sacrifice. If you can handle it, kill the enemy that's chasing us. If not, lead them away." Madame Gao wasn't worried that Fighting Man would fail, because the power of Tyrannical's demonic blade was beyond anyone's imagination. Madame Gao led a few ninjas to press down the trembling sacrifice with a black sack over his head. Her acute senses picked up the rumbling sound of a motorcycle engine outside the warehouse. That idiot Murakami. If he hadn't suddenly disappeared, he and Fighting Man would have been able to deal with any sudden enemies under the influence of Black Sky's power. Madame Gao thought angrily as she informed the mysterious woman, the leader of the 5-fingered gang. Under the starry sky in the early morning, the moon had just recovered from the lunar eclipse. The silvery moonlight shone on Danny's figure, creating a blood-red halo around him. In the dark, Chen-Ong drew out 2 pistols from behind his waist, calmly pulled off the safety, and put 2 index fingers on the triggers. The moonlight shone on the metal of the pistols, reflecting the brilliance of light. Danny waved his hand, and Hidorigami's genuine chi swept out. The blood-red moonlight around his body flowed into his palm like a river. It was as if a blood-red moon had fallen on his palm. His hand and the steel door of the warehouse hidden in the clubhouse, which was dozens of millimeters thick, suddenly burst open. Several ninjas who were hiding behind the door flew backward. The door of the warehouse was completely opened. The ninjas who were affected by Hidorigami's true energy quickly lost all their moisture. Their originally plump and tender muscles and collagen quickly shriveled and withered. They shriveled into a ball, their faces still maintaining a ferocious expression as they turned into dried corpses. Fighting Man's face couldn't help but twitch as he looked at the dead ninjas. He gripped the hilt of Tyrannical's successively long sword and asked solemnly, "Who are you? Why did you ruin our Han's grand plan?" Chen-Ong couldn't help but shake his head. "You can't say it out loud." Fighting Man was stunned. "What?" Chen-Ong had to explain to him. "Under normal circumstances, you can't confess to your organization. The Hand isn't a secret organization. It's just a small underground criminal organization. Under the nose of the U.S. government, there's no privacy at all. When Hydra does something bad, you can say, 'Cut off 1 head and 2 more will grow,' or shout, 'Long live Hydra.' But it's an extremely secretive, evil organization. They're not on the same level as you, who live under the nose of the government. At this time you can say, 'Don't ruin our plan.' But you can't reveal your identity by announcing your name. Now everyone knows it's the Hand's doing." Chen-Ong looked at the SHIELD agent who had just arrived. He couldn't help but put his hand on his forehead and sighed. I think the hand's doing. It's over. Fighting Man didn't know what to do. Instinctively, he wanted to reflect on what he had done wrong. But at this time, Danny made his move. The Hanba genuine chi of the calamity of war rumbled, and a dry, hot wind immediately enveloped the entire warehouse. Even the ninjas, who were accustomed to extreme environments, felt uncomfortable with the sudden change of environment. Their lungs were burning, as if a rough brush was scraping them with every breath they took. Every time he breathed, he lost water. The things around Danny also began to dry up. Fighting Man's face became even more serious. He said in a low voice, "The tribulation true chi? This is the Sirius blade." If it were any other heavenly weapon, Fighting Man's expression might not change. But for an old guy who was hundreds of years old, the memory of his youth clearly had a deeper impact. In particular, he had faced the Sirius blade at its most glorious time. Genghis Khan, Temujin, the proud son of heaven, used the Sirius blade to conquer all countries. His first move was the 7 disasters of the sword. Wherever he went, natural disasters, man-made disasters, and military disasters destroyed all lives and civilizations. This was the common nightmare of the 5 leaders of the Hand's Hand. Fighting Man held tyrannical tightly. It seemed that only this unfinished demonic blade could give him some psychological support. He swung his sword in the air. At this moment, Danny's body suddenly tensed up. Goosebumps appeared all over his skin. His keen senses and intuition as a warrior made him instantly feel that he was being targeted by something terrifying. But there was only a void in front of him. But Danny could clearly feel that in the void where Fighting Man pointed his sword, there was a brutal, ferocious, and irrational bestial nature that seemed to have accumulated through countless killings. It was the eyes of a ferocious beast when it was hunting. Stimulated by this, Danny's true chi became more and more active. He seemed to smell the stench of the beast in front of him. Fighting Man's face paled slightly. Even though he was holding tyrannical, he seemed to be afraid of what tyrannical had released. A gust of fishy wind blew over. Danny held the remains of the Sirius saber in his right hand and swung out his cudgel. The surging drought demon true chi instantly emptied the water in front of his cudgel. The invisible beast also pounced on him. Danny felt that the area covered by his true chi was empty. This feeling of aimlessness made him feel powerless and uncomfortable. The remains of the celestial wolf saber blocked a tremendous force. Danny, who was swinging his staff at Danny in midair, trembled violently. He was thrown into the air by a tremendous force and could only use his divine weapon as a shield. Although the beast's claws had bitten into the indestructible god weapon, the force carried by the beast still stained Danny's body. On his upper body, some spots on the tight-sleeved warrior's suit began to rot. The color of the fabric turned black. At first, it was just a little bit, but then it quickly expanded into a black spot. The ash rotted away and then fell off. Danny's clothes were rotted one after another, with holes appearing on them. The skin under the holes quickly turned white and lost its life force. Some parts even began to rot. Danny cried out in pain and his face turned cold. Immediately, the drought demon's true energy surging around his body began to wear down the corrosive power. His pale, rotten skin quickly began to wrinkle and wither due to the loss of water, forming a layer of dry skin. The corrosive power only managed to corrode a little bit of his skin before it was worn away. The celestial wolf saber was held against the void. Danny held the 2 ends of the iron staff tightly against the void. It was as if there was a huge beast biting the middle of the unremarkable iron staff, and the 2 of them were in a contest of strength. Danny's true chi reached a peak in this confrontation. He struggled to wave the remains of the god weapon to resist the beast's attack. The drought demon true chi drained all the water in the surroundings. Even Chern Ong had to avoid it and prevent the people from Hield from entering the warehouse and getting within 500 meters of Danny. The remaining guards in the warehouse, the Shoto and the ninja beside him, were all beginning to weaken. Every time they breathed, they lost a large part of the water in their bodies. Some of their skin had already dried up and turned into wood. A few ninjas knelt on the ground powerlessly, their hands covering their throats and making hissing sounds. Then, their eyeballs began to bulge and their facial features sunk. It was as if they were rapidly losing weight. Finally, their skin was wrapped around their bones, and when all the water had disappeared, they turned into dried corpses. Fighter wasn't in a good state either. The hand he used to control Tyrannical had begun to rot. Black corrosive energy spread from his arm to the rest of his body, but the rest of his body was shriveled beyond recognition. His hair had turned yellow, and strands of it were falling off his face. His strong body was also rapidly thinning. The confrontation between the two sides was reaching its climax. At present, from Chen Ang's point of view, the power of Demon Blade Tyrannical, which had undergone blood sacrifice, was far above that of the unrecast Sirius Blade. As a weapon grandmaster, Hand had used Tyrannical to create the Darkspace Evil Beast, which was even more powerful. Its power was almost unaffected by the Calamity weapon True Chi, but Danny had to constantly use the power of the God weapon to wear down the damage caused by the Darkspace Evil Beast. The advantage of the power of the God weapon was almost overwhelming. However, the situation between the two wielders of the God weapons was completely opposite. Tyrannical didn't choose to be a weapon grandmaster. Rather than saying that Fighting Man was using the power of the God weapon, it was more accurate to say that Darkspace was using Tyrannical's power to descend. As an evil creature created by Tyrannical, Darkspace's influence on the Demon Blade was much stronger than Fighting Man's. That was why Fighting Man was being corroded by Darkspace. Meanwhile, Danny had begun to immerse himself in the way of the God weapon. The God weapon was changing him and adapting to him. They were merging into one. From Chen Ang's point of view, the recast Tyrannical could completely control Darkspace. However, before the Demon Blade's blood sacrifice was complete, and before it could sense the weapon Grandmaster, using Tyrannical to control Darkspace was extremely dangerous. Tyrannical was now only a bridge between the two. Fighting Man could influence Darkspace, and Darkspace could also use this to corrode Fighting Man. In the hundreds of years since the Demon Blade was lost, the demonic beast known as Darkspace could not be completely controlled. Hand and Hui, who could only use its power through the yin-yang technique, were gradually being corroded by the demonic beast. If this continued, one day it would no longer be Hand and Hui controlling Blackspace, but Darkspace controlling Hand and Hui. The beast would transform into a god. Perhaps it was because Hand and Hui felt this danger that he was desperately pursuing the power of the Demon Blade, Tyrannical. Chen Ong calculated. If Darkspace wanted to kill Weapon Grandmaster Danny of the Sirius Blade, it would take at least 2 hours to expand its advantage. However, Fighting Man would not be able to last half an hour before he was completely corroded by Darkspace's power. Half an hour, the stalemate can only last for half an hour at most. After half an hour, if Danny can kill Fighting Man, he will stop Darkspace's descent and banish it again. If Danny can't kill Fighting Man, who is a vessel, and Fighting Man refuses to give up, he will be completely corroded by the beast's power and become the beast's vessel in the real world, Darkspace. At that time, Darkspace will control Tyrannical. Once this demonic beast that has been fed for hundreds of years loses its weakness, Danny will not be able to fight against it. At that time, Danny's best option is to escape. Using Fighting Man's body, Darkspace will be able to communicate with Tyrannical. After all, it's an evil creature created by the Demon Blade. After that, as long as Hand and Hui are the remaining 3 controllers, it will be able to transform from a beast into a god and become an evil god. It will continue the blood sacrifice to the Demon Blade and become Tyrannical's weapon grandmaster. From then on, it will completely change its fate. From an evil creature created by the Demon Blade's power using human beliefs and negative emotions, It will become the controller of the demon blade in one leap. Chapter 10:26. Chin Ong observed for a while. He felt that it would take some time for the two of them to fight to the death, so he turned and left. He followed the trail Madame Gao had left behind when she retreated. There was still half an hour until the time of the ritual. Madame Gao and her subordinates started to set up the ritual. According to the incomplete necromancy book, she first used the blood of the black goat to draw a pentagram on the ground. Then, she lit special incense candles at the 5 corners of the pentagram. She skinned the black goat and peeled off the goat's head. Madame Gao drank the blood from the black goat's heart and draped the goat's skin over her head. Her eyes observed the entire warehouse under the black goat's eyelids. The pitiful sacrifice was brought up. 2 ninjas pressed down on his arms, forcing him to kneel in the middle of the pentagram altar. The sacrifice looked at Madame Gao, who was draped in the goat's scalp and looked like half human and half goat. He whimpered and struggled even more violently. It had to be said that being a sacrifice was a technical job. In ancient times, the priests were the most knowledgeable and intelligent people in the civilization. It could be seen that being a priest was a technical job. Even in a bloody and backward civilization like the Maya civilization, the Maya priests had mastered advanced mathematics, astronomy, linguistics, medicine, and human anatomy. That was the essence of a civilization. That was why the Maya priests knew how to use the correct and superior sacrificial methods at the right time and place to operate the secret ritual. At the very least, if it was done by the Maya priests, the goat's skin would be much more refined, commented Chin Ong, who was quietly watching Madame Gao set up the ritual from outside the warehouse. He looked at the goat's head, which still had some black skin on it, and observed the irregular cut. He curled his lips in disdain. Madame Gao dipped her finger in the black goat's blood and wrote some complicated and strange runes on the pentagram on the ground. The runes were completely incomprehensible to humans. They did not conform to the grammar of any human language. They did not even seem like the language used to communicate with living beings. The runes were extremely ancient and mysterious. In the ruins left behind by humans there were bits and pieces of records about it. I wrote it wrong. Chin Ong shook his head and thought to himself, the original version of these symbols is recorded on Pluto's moon, the Hydra. When the ancient Mayan civilization summoned the alien fungus Migo, they received some teachings. In many ancient books there are also records of some of them. Among them, the Necromancer's Book, as the culmination of all of them, recorded the various uses of these divinity symbols. But in addition to the Mi-Go clan, only Hydra has this knowledge. In the 90s of the last century, this evil organization conducted an investigation into the origins of their organization. Their unmanned aerial vehicles have been to this satellite named after their organization, the Hydra. This was one of their birthplaces. When the scientists of Hydra named the planet's satellite, they named it after their organization, which shows the significance of this satellite to them. Hydra memorized all the divinity symbols on the Hydra and obtained many of the technologies of planet Yogs. In contrast, an evil organization like Hydra can rush out of Earth and find all the divinity symbols on Hydra, achieving what the author of the Book of Necromancy failed to achieve. On the other hand, the Hand Society can only hold the published private manuscript of the translation of the Book of Necromancy and painstakingly study the symbols that are full of mistakes in the translation. In comparison, the abilities of the two are worlds apart. No wonder Hydra could cross the globe, dominate South America, challenge the international order established by the United States, and infiltrate S.H.I.E.L. D. Hand and the Society could only hide in New York and Japan as a small underground gang. Chin Ong sighed. Some evil criminal organizations could change the world and become famous all over the world. Cut off one head and grow another. What about the others? They could only sell grass, collect black money, and raise demonic beasts. It could be seen that the difference between the two organizations was so great. Madame Gao, one of the leaders of the despised hand and the society, was still conscientiously devoted to the great cause of summoning the evil god. She began to use extremely vague syllables that many human tongues and vocal cords could not pronounce. She recited to the copy of the necromancer over and over again, "Hear my call, Lord of the endless void, Star shifter, solid foundation, Master of earthquake, terrifying conqueror, creator of pain, destroyer, victor of glory, son of void and chaos, guardian of the abyss, god of darkness, lord of dimension, enigmatic sage." Chenong once again held his forehead powerlessly and shook his head. "I read it wrong again. As expected, without me, they could not have summoned the evil god. This is too unprofessional. You can even say the summoning incantation wrong. This is the summoning of Yog-Sothoth. It is not the summoning of Yog-Sothoth." Chenongda walked out of the darkness and reminded them, "You're reading it wrong." Madame Gao raised her head in horror. Her face was hidden under the black goat's head. She shouted coldly, "Who is it?" The ninjas beside her pulled out their ninja blades and pounced on Chen Ong threw a small coin-shaped disc on the ground. Then, the coin-shaped disc split into a ring in midair. It quickly stuck to the ninjas who were rushing over. The ring emitted a small bioelectric current, attacking the ninja's nerve. The figures trembled in midair for a while before falling to the ground. Chenong slowly stepped past them and said, "At least you didn't tell the police who you are. At least the hand and the society has a clear-headed leader. But you still recited the incantation wrong. Of course, this is not your fault. After all, the summoning incantation is an imitation of the language of an alien, and the pronunciation structure of extraterrestrials and humans is very different. This is not something that can be learned with hard work. It requires talent. Sacrificial rituals aren't something that people with low IQ like you can learn. You'd better stick to your guns. Occult crimes, summoning evil gods to destroy the world, and so on are too high-end. Let the Hydra do it. Your hand and the society should just stick to ninjutsu and sell grass." Madame Gao had lived for hundreds of years, after all. Chen Eng's sarcasm did not anger her. She said in a low voice, "The legendary investigator of the Japanese yin and yang world, Chenong." Chenong looked at the altar under her feet and could not help but shake his head. "It's full of mistakes. Fortunately, occultism is not science. Otherwise, a device with the slightest mistake in the circuit would be useless. Only occultism rituals have such a large margin of error." Chenong picked up the ninja's blade that had fallen to the ground. He dipped the scabbard in the black goat's blood and casually changed a few symbols. Then, he walked up to Madame Gao. Madame Gao looked at him quietly and did not stop him from lifting the mask of the offering. Looking at the terrified middle-aged man under the mask, Chenong seemed to have expected this. He nodded and sighed. "As expected, it wasn't you." Madame Gao was puzzled. "Didn't you come for us?" At this moment, Luke Cage had also reached the warehouse. He hid in the darkness and eavesdropped. "I had my suspicions at first, but now I can confirm that the people who stole the real offering weren't you. The real offering was a young woman. This man should be David, who went missing a month ago. His birth astrolabe is very similar to the offering, but they're not the same. But it's not the same. I noticed this when I checked the information. It's not hard to figure out that two people with similar birth astrolabes went missing at the same time. It's a scapegoat. David was just Erica's scapegoat. Hand and the society, who fell into our sights from the beginning, were also scapegoats for the mastermind. He let you get the wrong offering, but he already had the real offering in his hands. Who is he?" Another woman walked out of the darkness. It was a Caucasian woman. She was old, but there was still an amazing charm left on her face. It could be seen that she must have been a peerless beauty when she was young. Chenong, however, just stared at her calmly. He was not surprised at all. No matter how beautiful she was when she was young, she was old after all. Chen Ong smiled and said, "You should be able to use the most flexible and most important finger in your hand. Although the society has 5 fingers, the Murakami is too mediocre, the fighters are too stupid, Soanda is too incompetent, and Madame Gao is too ruthless. Only someone with the temperament of a real leader can lead this ancient criminal organization." Hearing Chen Eng's words, Alexandra could not help but smile contentedly. However, Chen Ong continued, "Unfortunately, you're just the leader of a small organization like the society." Chen Ong looked at her and shook his head. "You're not that strong. That's true. If you were too outstanding, you would have developed the society into an evil giant a long time ago. You wouldn't be like this. After hundreds of years, you're still a nobody." Alexandra's face turned green with anger. Madame Gao was slightly calmer. She asked, "You said that our society was used by someone. In that case, who is the mastermind who is using us?" Chen Ong just looked calmly in a direction outside the warehouse and said slowly, "Of course it's the person you've never thought of. It's also the person we excluded from the beginning. The society thought that you were using him, but you didn't know that you were the prey of someone else." Chen Ong looked at his watch. It was time for the sacrificial ceremony. In the distant horizon, there seemed to be a flame suddenly ignited, illuminating the sky with a crimson-red light. The red clouds rolled, and the clouds seemed to extend countless tentacles. It was like a huge piece of meat, with many tentacles and mouths growing on it. Some creatures that looked like arthropods and shell-type creatures with dorsal fins or membranous wings on their backs soared into the sky from that direction and circled in the sky. Chen Ong said in a low voice, "Now, the mastermind behind this is already halfway to success." Alexandra said with a serious expression, "Why is it only halfway?" "He has clearly completed the sacrificial ceremony." Chapter 10:27. The insects that appeared in the sky flapped their huge membranous wings and emitted a buzzing sound similar to insects. They were about the size of 2 grown men, and their bodies were covered in a layer of cuticle. Their armor was like that of locusts, and they were covered in spikes and antennae. They looked like huge locusts that stood on 2 legs like humans. Their forelimbs had a pair of huge pincers. When they swooped down, they could use those pincers to clamp down on their targets, fly into the sky, and then throw their victims down from a high altitude. Or they could bring their victims to a high altitude where the air pressure was low enough to burst their lungs. Hundreds of these insects flew up from the direction where the huge flames had appeared as if they were on fire. They flew densely in the sky, and the buzzing sound of their wings was as ear-piercing as a swarm of bees. They were constantly twisting in the sky, and they danced in the clouds that stretched out their tentacles. They spat out something that looked like silk threads and landed on the blood cloud and flesh. They looked like spiders spinning something. The number of these things was enough to make one's scalp go numb. "What are these monsters?" Luke was already a little flustered. He pulled out his pistol and pointed it at the leader of the Hand Peace Society, Alexandra. Alexandra was obviously shocked by this scene as well. She was greatly affected by the fact that she had fallen into the enemy's trap. She said in a daze, "These are the descendants of the Great Old Ones, monsters from hell. The Great Old Ones are the source of all evil. They are existences that humans cannot understand. Compared to them, Black Sky is just an ignorant beast." Luke said with a trembling voice, "Can you send these insects back to hell?" Alexandra turned around and looked at Chen Ong with a pleading expression. Luke also turned his gaze to Chen Ong. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Chen Ong cleared his throat and explained, "Their race is called the Migo. They are not monsters from hell, but an alien race. They are worshippers of the most powerful evil god among the Great Old Ones. They live on planet Yogus, and they are not insects. According to human biological classification, they belong to the fungus family. This is a lower-level race among the Yogus fungi. They are the warriors of their race, or rather, cannon fodder. Fortunately, there hasn't been a superior race that has mastered the technology of the Mi-Go clan. We must seal their space door to Earth as soon as possible. Luke didn't have the time to ask more. Instead, he asked straightforwardly, how do we seal that space gate? Chen-Ong thought for a moment and replied, the space door is opened from planet Yogus to Earth. Either we use space interference technology to disrupt the stability of the connection of the space door there, or we destroy the coordinate point on Earth, which is the altar. In terms of methods, we can wait for the Guardians of Space on Earth's side, such as the Avengers, the Liberators, or the Camartage Mages. Their New York sanctum is quite close, and any Guardian force can detect the changes in Earth's space. When they come, just cut off the portal. Chen-Ong rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, moreover, the coordinates of the dimensional door are two-way. When Yogus opened the dimensional door to Earth, it also provided its own coordinates to Earth. Generally speaking, this kind of war is always the unlucky one. Earth really can't be called a weakling. It's hard to say who's sending themselves to our doorstep. Solar System Martian Revolutionary Alliance Intellectual World Observation and Response Department. Abnormal spatial disturbance detected from Ursa Major. The coordinates have been analyzed and sent to the Soviet Third Interstellar Fleet for processing. Soviet Third Interstellar Fleet. Are there more stupid aliens peeking at Earth? Head to the Ursa Major constellation. Position the coordinates using the Super Light Speed Warp Drive. Prepare the Star Destroyer Cannon, Super Gravitational Black Hole Generator, Stellar Energy Beam Weapon, Helium Flash Grenades. Soviet soldiers, burn the glass. On Earth's side, the Yogus fungi, who still had no idea what kind of terrifying planet they had extended their claws to, began to attack the humans below. On the other side, Luke, who had no idea what kind of terrifying power his side possessed, was also asking Chen-Ong anxiously, how much time do they have to arrive? Luke Cage was gripped by the pincers of a low-level Yogus. His divine power erupted and forcibly twisted the neck of the cannon fodder Yogus. However, this contact also allowed Luke to determine the strength of these cannon fodder alien races. Their pincers had a force of more than 20 tons, and their skin was comparable to alloy steel. One of them could destroy a special combat team that was not equipped with heavy weapons. This isn't something ordinary people can deal with. Even with such combat power, they are still cannon fodder? Luke frowned. Chen-Ong explained, the Yogus fungi aren't those brainless monsters you imagine. They are an alien race with very advanced technology. In the field of biochemical technology they are very skilled, even touching the edge of the dark technology mastered by the outer god. They once created a great old ones called Gadaman. They also once created a radiant polygonal octahedron from one of Nyarlathot's incarnations, a technological creation comparable to the Tesseract. In terms of biochemical technology and space technology, they are second to none among the alien races. This low-level race has integrated the biological armor technology of the Mi-Go race. Although they are cannon fodder, they are also cannon fodder with great combat power. Can we hold on until those guardians arrive? Luke asked loudly. Chen-Ong said helplessly, how would I know? SHIELD, is the relevant department okay? However, there is no superior race of the Mi-Go race yet. Once they appear, they will complete the anchoring of Earth's coordinate. Then, even if we stop this invasion, the Mi-Go race who has the coordinates of Earth can still open the space gate to Earth at any time, and even secretly build an outpost on Earth. Luke made up his mind and said, we can't wait for them to anchor the space coordinates of Earth. We must first remove the ritual altar that provides the coordinates for the space gate. A Mi-Go cannon fodder warrior flew towards Chen-Ong in the warehouse. Chen-Ong held a gun in one hand and fired 2 shots at the Mi-Go race warrior in the air. Green mucus splattered everywhere, but the damage of the gun to the biological armor was not fatal. Chen-Ong hid behind the table and said to Luke, I'm just an investigator, I'm not good at this kind of large-scale battle. Think of a way. Luke roared as he held a hammer with both fists and smashed a Mi-Go flying. He turned his head and saw that the entire port had become hell. The Mi-Go in the sky swept the port workers and shield agents into the sky. From time to time, there were miserable screams coming from the sky, and then there was the sound of flesh and blood falling to the ground. The rest of the SHIELD agents hid beside the car and relied on the large heavy weapons in the car to resist. Sometimes, the laser cannons could shoot down 1 or 2 Mi-Go race warriors, but it was nothing compared to the numbers in the sky. At this time, the Mi-Go race in the sky seemed to be driven and started to move. A large group of insectoids started to move towards the warehouse. Chen-Ong analyzed. Not good. These cannon fodder seem to have a leader. It seems like it's not that there are no superior races, but that they are doing something more important. It's about to succeed. What do you think it's doing? Alessandra came to Chen-Ong and said, It seems like we can't afford to fail. Now we can only work together to deal with the people who are using us. Chen-Ong thought for a moment and looked at Luke. He held Alessandra's hand and said, Let's work together. The superior race that has mastered the technology of the Mi-Go race should be fulfilling the summoner's conditions. Chen-Ong looked in the direction of the swarm and said, Many of the humans who summoned the Great Old Ones did so to make a deal with those demons and fulfill their wishes. In this regard, these monsters are very trustworthy. Under normal circumstances, they will complete the deal. But if the traitors want to die, they won't stop them. In other words, the mastermind is using the Mi-Go race to complete his plot? Luke said solemnly. Chapter 10:28. She turned to look in the direction of Fighter and Danny's battle. As soon as she said this, Fighter's body suddenly froze. His mind, which had been controlled by the black space, somehow recovered a little. He looked at Alessandra in disbelief. Then, a huge rotten hole suddenly appeared in the middle of his body. Danny instantly stopped and watched as the gambler turned into ashes bit by bit. Alessandra waved her hand, and Tyrannical flew into her hand. We have to work together. Madame Gao said with a trembling voice, You left a secret weapon in our bodies. Alexandra said coldly, Isn't this a matter of course? Why would I let a weapon that I can't control be in my hands? Alessandra waved her hand, and Tyrannical quietly floated in front of her. Compared to Fighter, Alessandra's control of the black space was much stronger. The skulls of the Mi-Gos flying in the sky shattered one after another. Green mucus splattered everywhere. The invisible beasts easily bit through their biological armor. The Mi-Gos could not detect them, nor could they touch the black sky. Hence, in the direction that Alessandra was facing, the Mi-Gos flying in the sky began to fall one by one. Luke finally saw a corner of the power of the black space. The powerful Mi-Gs could not even fight back in front of the black space beast. At this moment, Danny also flew into the sky with the power of the Sirius blade. As a slash slashed across the sky, the Mi-Gogs in the sky were rapidly losing water. Their mucus was evaporated by the invisible drought demon True Chi, and the huge bodies of the bugmen began to wither and shrink. They shrank to the size of a baby, and then fell from the sky, smashing into pieces. Calamity of war. 1,000 miles of barren land. The hot Zhen Qi turned into a hot wind, and wherever it went, the flying sand and dust were swept up, turning into a sandstorm that covered half of the sky. The flying insects were sucked into the sandstorm, and in front of this destructive humanoid disaster, they seemed abnormally small. In the sky, a hole was torn open in the insect swarm. Luke and Alessandra immediately rushed over, but Danny was the first to rush into the heart of the swarm. He saw a familiar figure surrounded by the swarm of insects in the warehouse full of insect remains. However, this human was not hurt by the swarm of insects. Instead, the surrounding insects hissed threateningly at Danny as if they were protecting him. Danny said in a trembling voice, Ward, I didn't expect it to be you. This was Danny's childhood friend, the son of his father's murderer, Harold Ward Mitchum. Ward smiled proudly and said, "Danny, you know, I used to be deeply uneasy about your arrival. Ever since I knew you weren't dead, I've been afraid that you would come back and take my company away. After my father died, I got some information from him. Originally, I wanted to destroy his will, but he actually gave you his property. At that time, I was very angry, but I found something from his belongings." Ward laughed loudly. "That old fellow doesn't treat me as his son at all. His death was not an accident, but a conspiracy. A scheme to avoid your vengeance and cure your own cancer and disability at the same time. He made a deal with Shiwa Society to slow down his illness and help Shiwa Society dig up some ancient ruins and ancient books. In the process, he became more and more familiar with that kind of evil. In order to obtain the power to cure his cancer, he even made a deal with some powerful evil existences. Later, his opponents and the Hand Society grew tired of his control, and he also predicted his own death, dying at your hands. So, he decided to fake his death once. He prepared a spare body for himself, took out his brain, and gave it to those monsters. Then, he used the remaining people to set up a sacrificial ceremony here, transferring his brain to another young body. It was obvious that Ward was almost driven mad by these schemes. He chattered on, "But I found out about his scheme. He actually wanted to leave me nothing. The documents he left behind gave all his property to his new identity. My sister and I had nothing. Because of the change of body, he did not treat me as his son. So, after I found out about all this, I wanted him to go from fake death to real death. I also made a deal with those monsters to find his brain and kill him." Ward laughed crazily, his voice sounded like he was crying. "I succeeded. I killed someone who is already dead. No one can punish me." Danny looked at his crazy friend and fell silent. He said in a low voice, "And no one will punish you." Chen Ong walked over slowly and shook his head. "Mig is actually very trustworthy. They will not use the summoner who made the first deal to make a second deal." Behind the laughing Ward, another person said slowly, "You always think you're smart, my son." Ward's smile froze. He slowly turned around and saw another version of himself. A young, high-spirited Ward. Danny had said, "So it's you," when he saw this Ward. But he had guessed wrong. Ward looked down at his body, and was horrified to see that his hands were full of wrinkles and age spots. He could not even feel his lower limbs, so he could not stand at all. In everyone's eyes, he was Harold in a wheelchair. Behind him, Ward laughed in a low voice and said, "I took my body back and gave it to you. I want you to see with your own eyes the consequences of betraying me. You are my son after all, so you should take this broken body of mine and live on." Ha! At this time, Ward remembered everything he had tried so hard to forget. He was already crazy, but at this time, he suddenly came to his senses. He remembered that he had summoned Mig, remembered that as soon as Mig appeared, it attacked him, remembered that his brain was taken by a Mig, and that Mig took out a brain from a barrel container that was 1 foot tall, slightly less than 1 foot in diameter, and had 3 strange grooves on the convex surface in an isosceles triangle shape. His father's brain. Then, his brain was placed inside the brain container, and his father took over his body. Then, after these strong stimuli, he began to hallucinate. He heard Harold saying to him proudly, "How can other people's bodies be more suitable than yours? My stupid son. That's right. You still have a sister. I will give birth to offspring with her, as my third-generation body. With the biological technology of the dependent of the great old ones, I will be immortal." Ward's brain was placed back into his father's body, but at that time, he had already gone mad. Ward's old body began to tremble violently. He raised his head to look at Danny, then suddenly turned around and frantically grabbed his own body, which was also his father, Harold. However, his chest was immediately pierced by the pincers of the Mig warrior next to him. Danny struck out with his palm, turning the Mig into ashes. He flew up and caught his friend. Ward coughed out black blood. He struggled, grabbed Danny's hand and said with a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, please kill him. Protect Joey." Joey was Ward's sister, and also Danny's childhood friend. During this period of time when Danny took over the company, although Joey did not give him a good look, she helped him a lot. In a brief moment of clarity, Ward uttered his last words. Uncontrollable anger caused Danny's fists to tremble, and his nails almost pierced into his flesh. He put down his friend's body. At this moment, his warrior's instincts and the power of a divine weapon master allowed him to sense Ward's memories. This man had once wanted to kill him, but he had always loved his sister. In order to protect her, he chose to kill his crazy father. At the same time, to protect her, he begged his friend, Danny frantically attacked Harold with weapon tribulation. However, countless Megogs swarmed him, blocking him in front of Harold, not allowing him to get close. The moment Ward died, the blood vessels on Tyrannical in Alexandra's hand began to move. Countless blood vessels on the black iron-like body caused the magic blade to glow red. Blood from Ward's body floated towards Tyrannical and was absorbed by it. Alexandra looked at the mutated divine weapon in her hand, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. Behind her, Chen-Ong said calmly, "The son rebelled against the father, the minister killed the king, the wife killed the father, and so on. The son killed the father, the wife killed the husband, the minister killed the king, the brother killed the brother, and the disciple killed the master. People blaspheme the heavens and the earth, go against the three principles, go against the 5 virtues, and break ethic. This is the tyrannical blood sacrifice. This blood sacrifice is amazing. It's a father killing the son, but from the identity of the body, it's the son killing the father. The father took over the son's body and used the son's identity to kill the son in the father's body. This is the biggest violation of ethic. No wonder Tyrannical is so excited. The recasting of the magic blade requires a blood sacrifice. There is no better sacrifice than this." Chen-Ong looked at Alexandra and said softly, "Is this really just a coincidence? Unfortunately, it's still not enough. The ethics of this blood sacrifice are complicated, but the quality is enough. However, the power is still not enough. Either we need to perform this blood sacrifice hundreds of times, or we need someone with a special identity and a stronger fate to host the blood sacrifice. Only then can we recast Tyrannical. It's best if this person is a tyrannical weapon leader. Therefore, when Tyrannical is born, there are often weapon leaders who kill their parent. This is the tyrannical curse of the Devil Blade. King Zhou of Shang's hatred for being killed by his minister triggered the Devil Blade curse. The divine weapon has its Tao, and the Devil Blade has its Devil Blade curse. Therefore, since ancient times, the divine weapon Devil Blade, the weapon master is a hero, and there are no good people. Harold looked at his own corpse and laughed. Idiot, do you know how complicated it is to give away assets? How can it be as convenient as using your own heir to inherit all of my assets? I chose you long ago, Ward. Joey is so amazing, how can I let others take advantage of him? Chapter 10:29. A 5-foot-long Mi-Go slowly crawled out from behind Harold. It looked like a crustacean, but it was divided into many segments like an insect. It had membranous wings like a bat on its back, and there was a whirlpool-shaped ellipsoid on its head. The ellipsoid was covered with many short tentacles. It used its last pair of limbs to walk upright, and the colors on the lumps on its head kept changing. This was a unique optical language. It was the language used by the superior races of the Mi-Go to communicate with each other. As everyone knew, the amount of information and speed of communication in optical language was far greater than that of acoustic language. It was obvious that the evolution of the superior Mi-Go had surpassed that of humans to a certain extent. The membranous wings on its back trembled slightly, and the rapidly vibrating membranous wings produced a buzzing sound. The frequency of the sound was getting higher and higher, and it made the people standing in front of it feel dizzy. Chen Ong took out a noise-canceling headset and put it on. He reminded everyone, "This is the superior race of the Mi-Go. They are highly intelligent extraterrestrial creatures. Their civilization is very advanced. They use the color changes on the lumps on its head to communicate, but they can also use the vibration of their membranous wings to imitate human language. They can also use the high-frequency sound produced by the high-frequency vibration of their membranous wings to hypnotize people." Chen Ong looked around and realized that the members of SHIELD were all protected by specialized equipment. Mrs. Gao and Alexandra from the Hand and Society had the power of black space to protect themselves. Danny easily blocked his ears with true chi. Only Luke Cage was slightly affected. However, he had mutated, and the ultrasonic hypnosis was not very effective on him. Alexandra pondered for a moment and understood. She said in a low voice, "Harold must have planned this for a long time. Due to our lack of knowledge in mysticism, we had no choice but to use him to hold the sacrificial ritual. We started working together 3 years ago. At that time, I knew that he had cancer, but he did not want to die. So, I threatened him with curing his illness and disability to help us with the blood sacrifice. However, through the Herald Corporation's continuous collection of mysticism magic books like the Necromancer's Book, Harold gradually mastered many secrets that we did not know. He gradually sank into this terrifying evil knowledge." Chen Ong interrupted Alexandra. "It's not that simple. You're still trying to hide something. For example." Chen Ong glanced at her and smiled. "Why did the Hand Society summon the old gods? Is it to obtain the power of the old gods, or is it for other purposes? It's impossible that you don't know about the existence of the old gods. Even if you're just their kin, although you can obtain the power bestowed by summoning them, the consequences will be endless. How many of those who summon an ancient evil existence like the great old ones have a good ending?" What Chen Ong said, Hand and Society could not deny at all. This logic was very simple. Hand and Society were not the crazy believers of the old gods, they would not be unaware of the danger of the evil gods, but for some kind of conspiracy, they still chose to use the blood sacrifice to summon these dangerous existences, indicating that they definitely had a trump card to deal with them. Chen Ong calmly analyzed, "Herod is very smart. He knows that he doesn't have the power to fight against you, the Yakuza's surveillance and infiltration. That day when Murakami attacked me at Herod Corporation, I discovered that Herod Corporation's security department had already been infiltrated by the Yakuza. You can take Herod's life at any time." So, Herod chose to take the risk. He planned to first take control of the sacrificial ritual by swapping the sacrificial items, obtaining the power to fight against you from the old god. At the same time, from the magic book, he learned about the Mi-Go's biological technology that could replace the brain, and he also learned about the star map that leads to planet yogas. Our involvement should be an accident. Herod could not have known about SHIELD's movements, and he did not know that we were investigating, so he used the Yakuza to hide his sacrificial ritual. It was an accident. But this accident caused our investigation to go astray. My attention has been focused on you, and that is why Herod's conspiracy succeeded. Herod's first step was to fake his death, to escape from your surveillance, and to hide himself, because no one would suspect a dead man. Through the previous sacrificial rituals, he obtained some secrets from the old gods, and he borrowed the power of the old gods. He prophesied his own death at the hands of Danny. So, he also wanted to use his death to deceive Danny. He gave his shares and assets to Danny to stop him from continuing the investigation. This also fooled me. When I saw that Herod's body did not have a brain, I did not think that he wanted to switch bodies, but thought that he was already dead. One of Herod's goals was to replace his own son, Ward's body, to get rid of the cancer and disability of his old body. He needed to borrow the power of the Mi-Go's race. His second goal was to obtain great power through the arcana. He made a deal with the Mi-Go's race to control the lower races that he summoned. Chen-Ong raised his finger and said, "But there is one thing that is very strange, and I have never been able to figure it out. Why did he tell you the correct time and place of the sacrificial ritual, but use a fake sacrificial item to deceive you?" Herod carried out this sacrificial ritual completely alone and secretly. From the analysis of the result, the fake sacrificial ritual fooled us, and made us focus our attention on the Yakuza. But this is just a coincidence. Herod had no way of knowing the movements of S.H.I.E.L.D. He might have used the Yakuza to divert attention, but that was not enough for him to take such a huge risk to lure the Yakuza here. Unless. Chen-Ong paused and then continued, the Yakuza were his second goal. He needed to trick you to come here, and then after completing the sacrificial ritual, the moment he obtained the power of the Mi-Go's race, he would attack you and take what he wanted. This thing was very important to him, so important that even if he had to take a great risk, he had to get you to come here with what he needed. Then what was it that made Herod so impatient that he did not even have the time to wait for a better plan? Chen-Ong asked another question. How could Herod be sure that you would have that thing with you? When we make a hypothesis, these questions will be easily solved. Chen-Ong said. That thing is your real trump card against the old gods. It can allow you to usurp power from the old gods, and even control the old gods. It is impossible for there to be two Yakuza and the Yakuza. You must have it with you because after the ritual is completed, you will use it to control the summoned old gods. Something that can control the great old ones must be extremely powerful. And Dallas is a demonic blade with this power. Legend has it that you used the power of Dallas to create black sky from the fear and negative emotions of humans. The power of every divine weapon and demonic blade is mysterious. But the previous weapon Grandmaster of Dallas, you used 5 fingers to create black sky and obtained the power of immortality. And the other weapon Grandmaster of Dallas, the 3 Zhang brothers who started the Yellow Turban Rebellion at the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, also used the power of this demonic blade to create the Taoist god Yellow Sky from the faith of millions of believers. But they were far more powerful than you, and the Yellow Sky they created was also a true god. Not a demonic beast like Black Sky. As far as I know, Dallas also had a weapon Grandmaster, the founder of Taoism, Zhang Daoling. He used the power of Dallas to destroy mountains and temples, and establish the 24 smelting to rule over ghosts and gods. Therefore, Dallas is called Black Sky in your hands, Yellow Sky in Zhang Jiao's hands, and Yang Ping Capital Merit Seal in Zhang Daoling's hands. Therefore, the power of Dallas' demonic blade probably came from the spiritual activities of humans to create ghosts and gods, and also inherited the power of the school of Yin Yang to control ghosts and gods. Dallas came from the power of the emperor of Shang dynasty, the school of Yin Yang, which was connected to Yin and Yang ghosts and gods, and created this demonic blade with the power of the school of Yin Yang. With its power, even if it's just a remnant, it's not difficult to control the summoned evil god. Even if it's the strongest few old gods among the great old ones, with Dallas' complete power, it's not difficult to control them. Therefore, after Yakuza obtained Dallas' remnant, he tried to sacrifice blood to the demonic blade, and also secretly tried to summon the old gods. Then, after the summoning succeeded, the old gods would descend and use Dallas to control them. All these plans might have a chance of success. Chen-Ong laughed coldly and shook his head. Unfortunately, your plans have long been seen through by Harold. He beat you at your own game, and used fake sacrifices to lure you here. He was prepared to use the power of the old gods to seize Dallas after the sacrifice was successful, and then counterattack the old gods. Chen Ong turned to look at Harold and smiled. Am I right, Mr. Harold? Chapter 1030. Luke Cage's eyes wandered between Hand and Harold. He hesitantly moved closer to Chen Ang's ear and whispered, Mr. Investigator, which side do you think poses a greater threat to us? Chen Ong sighed and said, The situation is clear now. Harold has summoned the evil god, and Hand have the demonic blade tyrannical, which can control the evil god. They both want to destroy each other, but no matter which side wins, they will have to use tyrannical to control the evil god. The key is tyrannical. Only by controlling the Taoist Tao can we take the initiative. Otherwise, any one of them will lead to a disaster. Luke and Danny turned to look at Alexandra. This old woman, who had lived for hundreds of years, was no saint. She said in a low voice, We can help you seal the evil god. Chen Ong coughed and reminded her, As long as you help her destroy the alien creatures controlled by Harold, she will have the chance to break into the core area of the altar and use Tyrannical's power to usurp the control of the altar. She will control the evil god's followers and seize the evil god's power. Danny immediately picked up the remains of the Sirius blade and looked at Alexandra warily. Seeing this, Harold laughed coldly and said, Looks like there is no trust between you two. Chen Ong turned to him and said, Many people think that they can fool the evil gods, and now their souls are wailing in regret. You think that you can make use of those existences, but you will end up burning yourself by playing with fire. Their indulgence is not kindness, but watching your foolish actions, and then at the critical moment, they will bring you despair. Harold said to Luke, Help me obtain tyrannical, and all of this will end. I have always been a law-abiding businessman, and I have already obtained everything I wanted. But you don't want to pay the price. Luke said directly. Yes. Harold said calmly, Help me obtain tyrannical, and I will use it to end everything. Otherwise, I will be controlled by the evil god, and when that happens, none of us will be able to get away with it. I also don't want to give this world to the evil god. No one wants to. I only made a deal. Now I want to refuse to fulfill the contract on the grounds of force majeure. Chen Ong smiled and said, The old gods are not financial institutions. There is no such thing as winning and losing. They only win because they make the rules, and no one can avoid paying the price. Luke glanced at Chen Ong. Instead, he took a few steps back, moving away from the space between Chen Ong and Harold. Chen Ong calmly said, Harold has already gained too much. This was a price he couldn't afford, and fighting with the evil gods wasn't a wise choice either. Apart from seizing Dallas, he had no other choice. Hand and society were also forced into a dead end. They couldn't lose tyrannical. I don't think we need to get involved in this mess now. Luke was confused. But no matter which side wins, we can't accept it. Chen Ong said slowly, So we only need to deal with the victor among them. Instead of letting them work together to kick us out first. As long as we don't get involved, they won't be able to trust each other and form a tacit agreement to deal with us first. Just as Chen Ong was persuading Luke to stand by and watch as the Han Society and Harold fought to the death, Madame Gao, who was hidden in the darkness, suddenly opened her mouth. Her voice was slightly hoarse as she said, Revenge is a flower that cannot be plucked by others. If you cannot personally use the blood of your enemy to wash away his sins, then you will not be able to do so. If that's the case, then the more than 10 years of torment that we've suffered in front of our loved ones will be meaningless. Danny's hands trembled slightly, but Madame Gao raised her head slightly to look at him and said, Whether or not we will be killed by Harold means nothing to you. But can you bear the thought of Harold dying at our hands? Revenge is a flower that blooms in the midst of thorns. Those thorns, every night, every dream, will hurt you. But are you going to let someone else take it? Danny clenched his fists and shouted, Stop it! He slowly raised his head. Luke placed his hand on his shoulder and advised, Using violence to curb violence will not calm your heart. Danny slowly moved his hand away and said, but it can anesthetize me so that I will no longer feel pain. Harold said in a low voice, "You have made the wrong choice, child." Danny suddenly sneered and said, "But you are afraid. You are afraid of that prophecy. You are afraid of me. Your power comes from the evil god, so you are even more afraid of the evil god's judgment on your fate. You will die by my hands." Behind Harold, countless MIAG warriors swarmed out. They sprayed out a kind of viscous bluish-green mucus. The mucus quickly deteriorated in the air. Wherever it came into contact with, it would quickly rot away. Like a fungal carpet, it adhered to the ground, walls, and everything else. Like lichens, it would rapidly spread out to cover the surroundings. If one were to look closely at the green fungal carpet, they would notice that it was made up of countless tiny, creeping tentacles. Those tentacles wanted to grab onto everything around them. It appeared as if the fungal carpet was grabbing onto the objects around it, slowly spreading and devouring them. However, any of the countless tiny tentacles that got close to Danny would quickly lose water and wither away like they were on fire. Even with the strong vitality of the fungal carpet, it could not resist the corrosion of the Hitarigime's vital energy. Seeing the fungal carpet spreading towards her, Alexandra tried to use her vital energy to resist it. However, she discovered that physical attacks had no effect on these things. The lethality of her vital energy was also negligible. Anything that came into contact with these things, be it steel, concrete, or flesh, would quickly decompose and spread. Alexandra saw with her own eyes that the large crane placed in the warehouse was quickly covered with a layer of green, fur-like fungal carpet. Alexandra had no choice but to use the power of the black sky again. The claws and teeth of the shapeless beast had no effect on these things. The corrosive power of the beast seemed to be able to cause the fungal carpet to wither and decay, but these things were growing too fast. The beast had no choice but to rise into the air to prevent these things from continuously corroding it. The green, fur-like fungal carpet quickly grew and covered the entire warehouse. It was still rapidly spreading and corroding the entire port. At this moment, even Danny felt that it was difficult to resist. He had to continuously use his Hitarigime's vital energy to corrode the fungal carpet that got close to him, but the growth rate of these things was too fast. The Migo warriors kept pouncing towards him. Right now, his vital energy could only slightly damage the biological armor on the surface of these aliens. Even if the highly condensed vital energy blades cut them in half, these alien warriors would not be corroded by the Hitarigime's vital energy. Then, their vitality would be devoured and provided to Danny to recover his vital energy. Even if they were cut in half, the aliens that fell into the fungal carpet would continue to absorb the substance provided by the fungal carpet. The green fungal carpet would crawl onto their wounds and stick them together. Then, these aliens would quickly climb back up and pounce towards Danny again. It was getting harder and harder for Danny to achieve victory. Alexandra and Madame Gao were also getting more and more anxious. Luke Cage and Chen Ong retreated to the side to observe. Luke looked at the terrifying green fungal carpet and felt his scalp go numb. Even one-eyed Nick, who was observing through the command system from afar, was unusually serious. He said to Luke through the earpiece, "These aliens are a huge threat to Earth. I've already contacted the Avengers, they're on their way. That investigator seems to know something. Go ask him about these alien bastards." "No need." Chen Ong stood up. "I'll tell you directly." Luke covered the bone conduction earpiece and said in surprise, "You can hear us." Chen Ong pointed at the noise-canceling earpiece he was wearing and said, "I hacked into the nearby channel. This is not a technology that can be mastered by ordinary people." Chen Ong said nonchalantly, "I have a government background. I'm an insurance investigator sent by China. Do you remember? I hope you can explain the scope of this insurance investigator's work to us after this is over," One-Eyed Dragon said with dissatisfaction. Chen Ong pretended not to hear him and continued to explain, "I've already explained the background of these aliens to you. They come from the fungus race of Yugas, Mi-Go. Planet Yugas is somewhere in the Ursa Major constellation. To prevent you from seeking death, I won't provide the detailed coordinates. The Mi-Go race has high attainments in biochemical technology and space technology. They have built a widespread teleportation network and a magic gate system. Yes, magic. Although compared to the magic they learned from the old gods, they are obviously more interested in scientific and technological research. However, these creatures who worship Shub-Niggurath, Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, and other old gods have also mastered a lot of forbidden magic knowledge. Wait, Nick said doubtfully. I think I've heard of these names before. No matter where you heard them. Chen-Ong smiled mysteriously. Remember, what you know is not everything about them. Luke saw Chen-Ong walk to the warehouse where the altar was originally set up. He looked up at the starry sky. Luke asked in return, I'm afraid you've withdrawn from the battle between them not just to let them kill each other and be a winner. If any of them wins, they won't give us another chance, Chen-Ong said. Chen-Ong said, so I just want to deceive them, get out of their sight to do one thing. Luke frowned. What is it? Chen-Ong looked at the altar's magic circle on the ground and reignited the 5 candles. Help me bring the remains of those monsters over. Luke obediently dragged over a Mi-Go corpse, whose head had been ripped open, and placed it in the middle of the pentagram according to Chen-Ang's instructions. Chen-Ong dipped a stick in the green mucus and drew a symbol that looked like 3 cantilevers of the Milky Way, or like 3 tentacles extending from the center. Chapter 1031. I'm not like the useless members of Hand and Society, nor am I a newbie in the occult like Harold. Normally speaking, the dangerous existences that we run into during our investigations are not existences that can be dealt with by mere humans. Not to mention a super-existence like the old gods. I'm just a normal investigator. How am I going to fight against those forbidden evil existences? Chen-Ong asked Luke in return. Luke squatted down before the pentagram and studied the mysterious symbols that Chen-Ong had drawn. With just these things? Chen-Ong smiled. An investigator has the 3 treasures, a crowbar, an ancient seal and a friend. Normally, the early stage is to use the crowbar to protect yourself and sacrifice 1 or 2 friends to get enough clues. Then it's time to face the great old gods and their minions. At that time, we need the ancient seal to deal with them? What kind of spell is this? Luke asked with confusion. The one-eyed man also perked up as he stared at the symbols that Chen-Ong had drawn. Not really. Chen-Ong sighed. Like I said, humans are powerless against the great old gods, just like how an ant is powerless against a giant elephant. In fact, the giant elephant is not evil. It's just that they will not consider the thoughts of the ants beneath their feet. Therefore, when faced with an existence that we are powerless against, we need to borrow the power of another similar existence. Only by exploiting the conflict between the elephants can the ants have a chance of turning the tables. The ancient seal is the symbol of the oldest existence among the great old ones, the symbol of the old gods. It represents their existence. You wish to borrow their power. Luke turned back to look at the port that was already covered by the green fungal carpet. His face darkened. You think one of these existences is not dangerous enough? You want to summon another one. That is just an insignificant race of minions. Chen-Ong shrugged. You don't think they are the true form of the old gods, do you? The old gods have many incarnations. At the beginning of the universe, after they were created, the Creator was not satisfied with his creation, so he created a new god, the Messiah. These miserable outcasts were sealed up by the new god and his knights. What you can see is nothing more than the incarnations and dependence of their insignificant power. Luke hesitated for a long time, but in the end, he decided not to stop him. He chose to trust Chen-Ang's experience. Chen-Ong said casually, Don't worry, I've seen many summoned avatars of the old gods who have lost control. A mere dependent race. It's not a big deal. Chen Ong said confidently, only those stupid summoners need all kinds of restrictions and conditions. A real investigator can use the ancient seal to summon the old gods and attract their attention. He pointed at the mysterious symbols that were painted on and said, these symbols themselves have magical powers and effects. The scribblers could only wait for a specific time and use the movement of the stars to carry out the corresponding blood sacrifice to pass the message. I, on the other hand, only need to confirm the location of the star chart and adjust the ritual circle. Chen Ong made some changes on the pentagram. Based on the current star chart, he used the symbol of the constellation and the mysterious runes of the Mi-Gu tribe to draw a circle with countless mysterious symbols around the pentagram. Chen Ong slit open the monster's chest and peeled out its heart. Dragging the heart that was dripping with green blood, he used the contraction of the diaphragm muscle and ingeniously used the muscles of the lungs and abdomen to cause the vocal cords to produce a sound that was impossible for a human to make. It was like the hissing breath of a poisonous snake or the whispering of several people. This mysterious language came from Chen Ang's lips and it made Luke shiver. It was as if as he spoke, many mysterious gazes appeared out of thin air. The light from the 5 candles turned green. The two's faces were imprinted with evil. Just as Luke was considering killing Chen Ong suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils became vertical like a cold-blooded animal's. It was no longer Chen Ang's gaze but something else. It was looking through Chen Ang's eyes. It stared at the heart on the altar. The magic circle on the ground, which was covered with countless runes, began to spin. Countless complex geometric symbols began to appear in the magic circle. Mi-Gu's blood began to seep into the ground. Chen Ong began to chant in cadence, fresh in the 9 heavens, surpassing the clouds. Through the night the sun rises. Past, 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 past. The 4 sides are missing, the gods are bright. Luke felt someone's grip on his scalp. It was not until Chen Ong finished that he asked in fear, "What are you summoning?" In ancient China there were 2 great thinkers. They observed the existence of the old gods and with their great wisdom, they understood their secrets. One was called Xian and the other was called Jun. They recorded the secrets of the old gods, Xian Jun's 7 chapters. I was lucky enough to read some of it. One of the old gods was called the King in Yellow, the merciful god of shepherds, the master of the deep space sea, the nameless one. Chen Ong pointed at the sky and said, "He is on the planet of Pleiades 16. I just sent him a message." Luke asked in fear, "What did you tell him?" Chen Ong pointed at Mi-Gu's wreckage and said, "Of course I told him that there are some Mi-Gus here that he does not like, so he will send people to kill them." Luke thought about it and asked, "Is there a conflict between the old gods that these aliens worship and the King in Yellow?" "No." Chen Ong explained, "These aliens also worship the King in Yellow. This one is also on the list of Mi-Gu's worshippers." "Then why?" Luke was confused. Chen Ong interrupted him, "There is no why. Do not try to understand them from the perspective of mortals. After I sent a message to Hastur, I used the spell of exorcism to summon his kin. They should be on their way now. I just don't know if it will be Byakuya or Itakuya. It shouldn't be Royal. Because Arcturus, where Royal was, disappeared a few months ago due to the cosmic disaster. The universe is full of danger. Even the great old ones, the kin of the old gods, will face unpredictable disasters. I can't help but feel sorrowful. The impermanence of the universe and life," Chen Ong said with a sigh. Planet Yogus. A fleet of interstellar battleships left the subspace and appeared within the defense circle of planet Yogus. This immediately alerted the outer defense system deployed by the Mi-Gu race. Their biological battleships immediately went to meet them. The colors on the surface of some of the biological battleships changed as they tried to communicate with these uninvited guests. However, among the battleships, a few small frigates immediately leaped into the star's core. Using the immense energy there, They opened up a spatial force field that enveloped the entire star. They used gravity to distort the photons emitted by the star, forming a large convex lens that focused the light of the entire star into a beam. Then, it projected the beam onto planet Yogas. In an instant, half of the planet's surface melted. What kind of fungus was this? Spores. They all evaporated in an instant. Only the remaining half, which was on the opposite side of the planet's surface, had the Yogas fungus left. The highly intelligent Yogas fungus and the Mi-Go race were shocked. Before they could recover from this silent brutality, half of the entire race had disappeared. The despairing Mi-Go race asked these aliens, "Why did you destroy us?" The flagship replied using the Mi-Go race's optical signal, "What does it have to do with you?" At this time, the other small frigates had already opened up their force fields on opposite ends of the star. 3 huge mirror force fields that surrounded planet Yogas formed an equilateral triangle. The concave mirror of the star adjusted and split into 3 beams. One of them was still aimed at planet Yogas, while the other 2 were reflected by the 2 mirror force fields and shot towards the back of planet Yogas from other directions. At this time, every corner of planet Yogas was under the direct beam of the star. The entire surface of the planet melted instantly, and all life was wiped out. The fleet commander ordered, "Maintain the concentrated light radiation for 3 days to ensure that the planet's biosphere has been cleansed. The other civilization has not reached the level of a parasitic star nucleus. The civilization sphere is considered a biosphere on the planet's surface. It does not possess the ability to survive the cleansing of light radiation. Judging that planetary destruction weapons are not required. Executing a light cleansing procedure. Application approved." Chapter 1032. Father, Heimdall detected abnormal fluctuations in space transmission on Earth. It may be the Mi-Gos. Thor hurried to Odin's throne and said to the blind God King, "The Mi-Gos may have invaded Midgard. I need to lead the Asgardian warriors to expel them." "No need to go." Odin sat on the throne, his head leaning weakly on the armrest of the throne. Thor was holding a hammer and dressed in military uniform, obviously ready to set off. Hearing his father's words, he was puzzled. "Father, we need to protect the 9 worlds." Odin sighed. "Now it seems that we should protect the other races from the 9 worlds, or from the Midgard people. Just now, the Soviet battleships have jumped to Ursa Major, and another planet is about to be destroyed. Although there are not many civilizations in the Milky Way, they can't withstand such destruction. Who should we protect?" Thor was a little uncomfortable when he heard this news. He hesitated. Maybe Midgard is just overreacting. After all, it was the Mi-Gos who first invaded Earth. The Dark Elves have been wiped out. Odin sighed weakly. "The dwarves and elves are very afraid, and so are the giants. They don't know when their civilization will be destroyed by that group of war maniacs. The hegemony of Asgard is being challenged, and the order we established is being threatened. And the race that destroyed the order I established is the ancient civilization of Midgard. The Dark Elves." Thor couldn't help but say. "How were they discovered?" "They were born in the dark. As long as they want to hide, no one should be able to find them. They are the dark races. Their civilization was born in the 9 worlds, or the dark period of this universe, which is what we, the light races, can't feel, the dark matter period at the beginning of the birth of matter. They are a civilization composed of dark matter until the birth of light, the largest energy in the universe, broke away from the state of dark matter, and the entire dark world was silent and frozen. In order to save their civilization, the most ancient Dark Elves tried their best to contact us. They were originally the creation of the Apocalypse, the Dark Race, which is on a parallel line with us, the Light Races. But because of the gradual silence of the dark universe, it is becoming cold. Therefore, the 9 great nations work together to help them, using the remnant of the creation substance left behind in the dark universe when the universe was born, an infinity gem. He created a weapon that can control the darkening of matter and energy. It is also the shell of the infinity gem, the ether particles. The dark elves came to the world of light by relying on the ether particles. The civilizations of the 9 great nations worked together with them to deal with the natural disaster of this universe, the apocalypse. But later, after the Golden Age passed, the long war against the calamity of apocalypse caused the new generation of dark elves to fear. They were afraid of the apocalypse and the disaster of the light world. They longed to return to the dark universe and no longer have anything to do with the light world. Their leader, Malekith, attempted to use the power of ether particles to darken photons and turn them into dark matter. Ignite the world of darkness, melt the ice and cold there, and recreate a world suitable for the survival of the dark elves. This is the cause of that war. We cannot tolerate deserters, and we cannot tolerate traitors who want to destroy our world of light. The infinity gem with the creative ether particles is the one among the 6 infinity gems that represents matter, which is the reality gem. The power of this gem can control the interaction and effects of matter in the universe. The matter in the entire universe is endless, and it can affect the matter in our world, gravitons, photons, atoms, electrons, and so on. It is called light matter, which is the matter of reality, and those existences that can't contact us are called dark matter. The reason why the Dark Elves were not discovered by Heimdall was that they were originally a race that lived in the dark matter. Of course, we couldn't find them hiding in the darkness. But the reality gem is the only material existence that can contact all matter, whether it is light matter or dark matter. We used its special properties to create the ether particles that can make the dark races light. And now the ether particles, or rather, who has the reality gem? Thor was stunned. In the hands of the Soviets' ally, the Republic of Republic, Odin sighed. Their excavation of the reality gem has far surpassed ours. After the Dark Elves recovered, Malekith's foolish behavior angered them. It was ridiculous that the Dark Elves thought that the ether particles were their weapons. They could also use the special matter between darkness and light, ether, created by the ether particles to enter and exit the world of darkness. So, after the Republic completely darkened the ether matter, they could no longer obtain the energy of the world of light, and the entire civilization was frozen in darkness. The remaining Dark Elves, who desperately replaced the ether that made up their material bodies with light matter, were destroyed by the Soviets in the void. If you go to the asteroid belt, you can still see their final remains. We once protested with the Midgard people and the Revolutionary Alliance, trying to protect the Dark Elves who finally turned to the light, but they were already bloodthirsty. They were preparing for the final war. Before that, any civilization that provoked them would be obliterated. This civilization is binding the universe to itself. If it fails, they will drag the entire universe into the abyss and bury it. Odin said in a deep tone, "But although they are powerful, I do not see the light of hope for victory in them. The apocalypse is a disaster that all life and civilizations have to face, but I will not allow anyone to drag us to be buried with them in the war." Thor listened to Odin's narration of these Asgardian epics and remained silent. Odin could see that his child was still looking forward to resisting with Midgard, resisting the tyranny of the apocalypse, resisting the Creator's manipulation of the fate of the entire universe and Asgard. But what he couldn't say was, he had seen too many rebellious races and seen too many brilliant civilizations destroyed in the face of the apocalypse. He didn't want this day to come for Asgard. He was afraid of the 5 terrible shadows in the universe and the Creator who created them. He would rather be weak than let his race survive, but the soul he had created for Asgard did not allow him to say such words. The soul of a civilization, even if he was the king, could not be changed. Odin raised his head and looked behind him. It was the direction of Earth. His lips trembled slightly before he said, "Someone opened a portal in Midgard again." This time, it is to the Taurus Seven Sisters star cluster, Pleiades star cluster. Thor, go and take a look. Father. Thor clenched his hammer and said in confusion. Odin waved his hand dispiritedly. You can go. I'm a little tired. Chen-Ong looked at the black cracks in the middle of the altar. These spatial cracks appeared out of thin air and devoured the surrounding light and matter. The bright starlight of the star field on the other side shone through. In the middle of these cracks, some eyes that made one's scalp tingle were peeping, and the rhythmic flapping of wings or the sound of membranous wings could be heard coming from inside. Then, a winged creature that looked like a hybrid of a crow, a mole, a vulture, an ant, or a rotting human corpse crawled out from the crack. Luke looked at it nervously. He asked Chen-Ong with a trembling voice, "What are these things?" Chen-Ong said calmly, "These are the minions of the king in yellow, Hastur, that I contacted, a low-level servant race known as the Bayaki." "Strange, why would they summon these things?" Luke asked nervously. "Did the summoning go out of control?" "No." Chen-Ong frowned. "I mean, these things are called intergalactic horses. They are a kind of void creature that lives in outer space. If you want to go to outer space, Pluto, Neptune or something, it is indeed more convenient to summon them. But their combat power is not that strong." Before Chen-Ong finished, Luke saw the summoned Bayaki tear apart a low-level Migo. He said numbly, "You call that not strong?" Chen-Ong said condescendingly, "Earth civilization can take care of 7 or 8 of these minions with one hand, and they won't even have to breathe. The King in Yellow is a famous deity from the 7 secret scriptures of Xianjun. The great old ones under his command should be multiple in number. At least 2 of them from the great race that can travel through time." "I give this summoning a bad review," Luke said in confusion. "There are minions that can travel through time? What is this great race? Which planet are they from?" Chen-Ong shrugged. "They are on Earth." "There are such things on Earth?" Cyclops asked anxiously. "What other information have you not told us? What is this great race? How long have they been on Earth?" "The great race is called the Yith. They are a strange life form that can exchange their mind with the body of other creatures and races. They can learn about the past, present and future of the people they have exchanged with. Because they have swapped bodies so many times, no one knows what their original form was like. According to the known records, the earliest inhabited planet of the Yith has already died. Before the planet died, they came to Earth 200 million years ago through mental exchange. Then, due to the war between another alien race, the flying polypus hydroids, their civilization perished. But before they died, they exchanged their minds with the next ruler of Earth, the beetles. That is why their civilization is still living in the future. Wait, what kind of race is the flying polypus hydroids? The next ruler of Earth after humanity is the beetles? Cyclops started to seriously consider whether he should suggest the extinction of the beetles in the Security Council. Chen-Ong shook his head and smiled. "That is just a possible future. The Yith are too naive. Their time travel can only target one timeline, they can't jump to different parallel worlds. So the future they speak of is actually a possibility. Of course, for them, that is the only possibility. However, in the books left behind by China's 2 oldest great thinkers, Lord Xian He, it was recorded that in the future, the Creator had destroyed all possibilities. Those parallel worlds were collapsing, and all the world lines were heading towards destruction. There is only one hope left, it is in this era. So, there will not be a second ruler of Earth. The Yith escape to a timeline that is destined to be destroyed. In the future, they are already dead." Chen-Ong said casually, "Actually, there's no need to worry at all. Few of the great old ones hiding on Earth can fight. Otherwise, why would they hide on Earth?" During the process of humans becoming the ruler of Earth, not only did they wipe out countless species on Earth, they also destroyed countless alien species in the competition. That was how they became known as the Upright Eight. The civilization in the Milky Way has forgotten the dark age dominated by monkeys. When they first escaped from Skynet, the ancient apes could easily destroy planet. During the process of evolution, even though the race weakened, their civilization became more and more terrifying. They wiped out many of the great old ones. Not to mention, on this planet, there is an ancient civilization that escaped from the Creator in another universe. They can easily take on a dozen of the great old ones. As they spoke, more and more Bayakis struggled out from the space crack. Once they came out, they rushed to execute their god's will and pounced on the abandoned Mi-Go. More and more Mi-Gos were intercepted by the Bayakis. In midair, the two groups of monsters fought fiercely. This also attracted the attention of Herald and the Hand Peace Society and the others. The SHIELD agents finally heaved a sigh of relief after the Mi-Gos were killed. Chen Ong, who had turned the situation around, stood at the side, quietly enjoying the show. Then he heard a horse-faced man in a magic cloak floating beside him. He looked at the two groups of monsters and said, "Am I late? The New York sanctum is quite far away. What's going on here?" he asked Chen Ong. Chapter 1033. How did you do it? The horse-faced man watched for a while as the alien monsters fought each other. He also noticed the altar on the ground and the mysterious symbols on the pentagram. He turned around and asked Chen Ong what. Chen Ong asked him to explain more clearly. How did you summon those things from the other dimension? The horse-faced man pointed at the Bayaki gliding in the sky. The Bayaki pounced on a Mi-Go and tore its head off. Then, another Mi-Go clamped its wings. A few ferocious insect monsters swarmed it and tore it apart. That's a very advanced spell, the horse-faced man said. In Kamartaj, there aren't many sorcerers who can summon monsters from the other dimension. Bayaki. The horse-faced sorcerer read out the name of the monster. He seemed to be uncertain. He used his suspension ring to open a dimensional door the size of a teacup and took out a book from it. The cover was titled The Book of Dejian. The sorcerer flipped to the middle page. There was an illustration of Bayaki on it. He compared it to the monsters in reality and flipped to the next page. There was a full-body portrait of a Mi-Go from the upper race. And Mi-Go, the collected book of Dejian. Chen Ong called out the other name of the book in his hand. This book was said to be written by the Atlanteans. It was known as the world's oldest book. It recorded the creation of many species by the Creator and the origins of humans and other races. It included the secret history of Eve's tribe leaving Africa and being subjected to the Messiah apocalypse in the Red Sea region of Egypt. They ate the fruit of wisdom given by the 4 horsemen and became humans. This was the record of the Atlanteans. It included the history of the prehistoric civilizations of Hibernia, Lemuria, Lomar, and Mu. It also briefly mentioned the interconnected multiverse and the hierarchy of the universe. The Creator and the Messiah, the old God before humans reinterpreted the Bible, the future and destiny of the entire universe, and the secret of the 4 horsemen at the end of the world, the Armageddon. It was originally written by the Atlanteans on palm leaves in the Sensor language, and it was called the Dekian Collection. The version held by the Kamartaj sorcerer was brought to Earth by an existence from Venus. Chen Ong saw the horse-faced man, or rather, the current generation of Supreme Sorcerer Strange, turn around to look at him in surprise. Chen Ong said, "Legend has it that Kamartaj inherited a lot of Tibetan monks' mysticism heritage. The first generation of supreme sorcerers learned mysticism knowledge from the Central Plains and Tibet, eventually becoming the supreme sorcerer of the generation. They signed a contract with the Trinity of another plane, King Wilshandi, and obtained endless magic power." Strange's eyes grew sharper and sharper, but Chen Ong said calmly, "China has inherited many legacies from ancient civilizations. It is a rare civilization that is a hybrid of ancient humans and apocalypse humans. Therefore, for a long period of time, China had many cultural exchanges with the Eastern barbarians, which is also the Atlantean civilization. Therefore, a considerable number of Atlantean magic books have been preserved. Under such circumstances, the Deccan collection was preserved by the Tibetan monks and the libraries of the dynasties of China. Supreme Sorcerer Strange looked at the magic circle on the ground with a strange expression, then said in a low voice, "The magic circle on the ground that summoned the wind elves, Bayaki, was your doing." Chunong interrupted him. "I prefer to call it, Demon Restrain Ghost Tome." When Strange heard the name Chunong said in Chinese, his pupils shrank slightly, a dangerous glint flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "The Mystic Lord's 7 Secret Chapters. I didn't expect that there would still be people who have read this magic book. I've looked through all the books in Camartage, but could only find a few words about it in a few ancient notes. I thought this book no longer existed in this world. As long as it exists, there will be traces." Chunong said lightly, "Time is long, but it cannot erase all traces. There will always be some things that can be passed down. For ordinary people, these traces may be meaningless, but to us, even the slightest trace of existence can allow us to trace back to its root. We—" Strange shook his head with a slight sarcasm. "You and I are not the same kind of existence. I know that you feel good after learning some secret knowledge and deciphering some of this world's secret. You think you're an insider. But drawing some ancient symbols according to the book and reading some magic books does not make you a sorcerer." "I didn't say I'm a sorcerer." Chunong shook his head. "I'm just an investigator. I'm not a sorcerer. An 8-elemental grand arcanist, a master of both magic and magic, a psionic master. Eastern immortal sect master, Western supreme god, well versed in both the East and the West. A part of the existence called Chunong who existed all over the multiverse." He did not say it out loud, but it was self-evident. Ordinary spellcasters are called sorcerers. Spellcasters who use cheats are called spellcasters. Spellcasters who create cheats, another profession for scientists, are called sorcerers. I'm a sorcerer among sorcerers, a god among gods. "Then don't fiddle with things you can't control," Strange said solemnly. "I've seen many people pursue power they can't control, vainly attempting to control things that don't belong to them. In the end, these people play with fire and burn themselves. They only see the benefits on the surface, but never consider if they are qualified to control them. So, I've seen another one here, not a sorcerer, not a specialist, but dared to summon the most dangerous kind even among devils, the kin of the old gods. I should thank you for not making things irreparable before I arrived. It's a blessing that this world wasn't destroyed in your hands." Strange said coldly to Chunong, then turned around and prepared to expel the 2 groups of monsters. At this time, Chunong said to his back, "I know you, Dr. Strange, or Sorcerer Supreme. 6 years ago, you were a doctor with crippled hands. In order to heal your hands, you went to Camartage to learn magic from the Ancient One. I've heard that you're a daring person who often secretly reads the forbidden black magic books of Camartage. You also use the Eye of Agamotto without permission to control a power you know nothing about, the power to control time. And after the death of the Ancient One, you used the Eye of Agamotto to establish the Ring of Time, imprisoned Dormammu, and finally forced it to withdraw from Earth. I don't need you to tell me about these great achievements of the past." Strange slowly turned his head and said, "And can you explain this? Apart from me, it seems that only Dormammu knows all this. And I've never told anyone else. On the day of Dormammu's invasion," Chunong smiled, "I happened to be in Hong Kong, there watching you go back and forth. I'm not talking about you, but Dormammu's men, your senior brother Mordo, and Sorcerer Wong. It seems that it's hard not to notice such a big movement. So, you're hiding and don't dare to come out?" Strange sneered. Chunong remained calm. "Fortunately, it ran fast, otherwise I'm afraid it wouldn't have had the chance to leave Earth." "Is that why you're hiding?" Strange said sarcastically. But Chunong smiled. I've seen many people pursue powers they can't control, trying to master things that don't belong to them. In the end, these people play with fire and burn themselves. They only see the benefits on the surface, but never consider whether they are qualified to master them. At that time, I saw another apprentice who had just come into contact with magic, but he dared to use the power of the Infinity Stone to face a legendary wizard who had become the will of another plane. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about this world being destroyed in your hands, because you can't do it at all. Chen Ong waved his hand. As for Dormammu's invasion, after all, it's your Kamartaj's own business to protect the 3 great temples. Now it's the 2 great temples. I forgot that the Hong Kong temple has been ordered to be demolished by the government because of property rights. It's said that you've talked to the dimensional warriors about property rights, and it's still the same as the 3 great temples protecting the world. Unfortunately, you'd better protect the South Asian subcontinent and North America. After all, the great celestial empire has its own national conditions, and it never needs others to do anything to resist foreign aggression.